Chapter 392. Chu Yang's laughter reverberated throughout the world. It seemed as if it could shake the wind and thunder. King of Hell Chu's arrogant attitude was imprinted in the hearts of the two armies. The heavens trembled, the mountains shook, and the earth moved. The three armies held their breaths. It seemed as if this figure who was roaring towards the sky was like a heaven-shaking god. It seemed as if he could cut the sky and the earth into two halves wherever he passed. So arrogant. So arrogant. This King of Hell Chu is good. Diwu Qingro chuckled and shook his head. I was tricked by this guy in the end. He can proudly declare to the world that he can be as arrogant as he can. But I can't. But this has created an illusion in front of the two armies, that I have fallen into a disadvantageous position. This guy. He won't let go of any opportunity. Diwu Qingro slowly thought as he returned to his camp. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake his head while thinking about Chu Yang's words. This King of Hell Chu's words seem meaningless on the surface. But in reality, every word he said was aimed at the defenses in his heart. Perhaps I would have been influenced by him if my mind wasn't firm. Immortality, doesn't it affect me? Diwu Qingro's face sank. Millions of soldiers remained silent as they watched the two separate. They watched King of Hell Chu ride his horse back to the camp. They watched Diwu Qingro return. And the day passed like this. The curtain of night fell and the world became dark. The Iron Cloud's camp was dotted with stars. The patrolling troops were coming and going. The army was ready for battle. Tai Longcheng and Tai Butian were sitting opposite each other in the commander's tent. This King of Hell Chu is much more arrogant and overbearing than before. Tai Longcheng smacked his lips and praised. He threatened Diwu Qingro. He made Diwu Qingro eat a loss in front of so many people. This is an unparalleled boost to the army's morale. Tai Butian smiled and replied, yes. He thought, that's natural. After all, King of Hell Chu is the real King of Hell Chu. However, Diwu Qingro ate a loss in silence. So, Great Zhao's morale will inevitably be affected. If Diwu Qingro wants to restore his reputation, then he can only use his face to do so. Therefore, Great Zhao may attack the camp tonight. Tai Longcheng and Diwu Qingro had fought for half of their lives. So, it could be said that they understood each other very well. It's just that, even if it's a sneak attack, it's hard to predict what kind of measures he'll take and what kind of methods he'll use. Tai Butian frowned. The only thing we can do now is to stick to the status quo. Tai Longcheng took a deep breath. In Butian Pavilion's main camp, King of Hell Chu was wearing a black robe and a sinister mask. He looked like the real King of Hell as he sat majestically on the highest chair. His sharp gaze was incomparably sharp as he looked at his subordinates. A bone-chilling cold filled the tent. Chang'an and Chen Yintong both sat straight and expressionless. Their hearts were filled with apprehension. What's going on? The minister had clearly relaxed for a while. Why is his coercion getting heavier and heavier this time? This feeling of oppression was really unbearable, making it hard for him to sit still. She stole a glance at Wu Qianqian, who was standing next to Chu Yang with an ice-cold expression. She cursed silently. When did this Russian granny come? How come we didn't see her? Especially during this period of time, the new recruits of Butian Pavilion were seeing the real King of Hell Chu for the first time. They were so frightened by this gloomy atmosphere that they almost peed in their pants. Two hall leaders, please report everything that has happened recently. Chu Yang's finger gently tapped on the table in front of him. It was as if the King of Hell was beating a drum. Both of them cursed silently in their hearts. Didn't you already know? But in this kind of situation, who would dare to say even half a word? They had no choice but to report everything again. Chu Yang quietly listened. Finally, he finished listening and said casually, so, you're saying that everyone has been very busy during this period of time, right? So, everyone's strength hasn't improved. It's not because everyone didn't work hard but because they were too busy? Isn't that the case? Chang'an and Chen Yutong's faces fell at the same time. This was the only thing that Minister Chu had not urged during this period of time. Everyone felt as if they had been pardoned. They did not expect that he would bring it up today. This is the place where we are right now. Tens of millions of ghosts are screaming day and night. Chu Yang said casually, now in my opinion as long as the war starts, many of you will join the ranks of these ghosts. This is the consequence of not working hard on your own strength. Minister Chu snorted heavily. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. We will soon face Golden Horse Riders Department. Everyone get ready. Chu Yang said casually. Then he waved his hand. Chang'an and the others hurriedly left. They were sweating profusely. The minister's power was getting heavier and heavier. Only Wu Qianqian and Chu Yang were left in the tent. The strength of these people must be pushed every day. Chu Yang said softly, people are lazy. And it's impossible for these people to rely on self-conscious practice to increase their strength. Therefore you must set a goal for them every once in a while. Let them complete it as a mission. This will increase the strength of Butian Pavilion. Yes. Wu Qianqian said. What stage are you at now? Chu Yang looked at Wu Qianqian. 3rd grade martial master. Wu Qianqian said somewhat embarrassedly. She didn't know that her progress was enough to make many people dumbfounded. Not bad. Chu Yang said. It was indeed not bad. The martial arts of Beyond the Heavens sect were known for their steady progress. It was impossible to improve quickly. Wu Qianqian's speed was already beyond Chu Yang's expectations. Wu Qianqian bit her lips and said, Chu Yang, I want strength. I want to advance quickly. Can you help me? She said awkwardly, I know you have many martial arts techniques. I want to improve myself quickly. The faster the better. I don't want to catch up with you. But I want to break into upper 3 heavens or upper 3 heavens when I miss you. I want to listen to your legends. Chu Yang pondered for a moment. Okay. I will choose for you. How could Chu Yang not want Wu Qianqian to improve her strength? That way she would at least have the ability to protect herself. Then Chu Yang frowned and thought. He asked the sword spirit in his mind, is there a martial art suitable for women to practice? It's more powerful and faster to practice. The sword spirit was sitting cross-legged between the mysterious Yang Jade and the mysterious Jade Crystal. He had recovered his spirit with the help of the mysterious Yang Jade and the mysterious Jade Crystal. Moreover, he had made progress. He frowned when he heard Chu Yang's question. A martial art for women to practice? Well, don't talk about the ordinary ones. They are too slow. Chu Yang flatly rejected. Then there's only one. The sword spirit said, fortunately my strength has improved greatly. So, I have remembered many things. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to answer your question. What? How about the mysterious Yin transformation? The sword spirit was clearly proud of himself. He looked as if he was presenting a treasure. Mysterious Yin transformation? Chu Yang was startled. Isn't that a devil martial art? Nonsense. The sword spirit angrily said, this is the most orthodox martial art. But, someone tampered with the formula and reversed the meridians. So, this martial art must absorb the power of a girl's mysterious Yin female body to practice. But, I have the complete formula of the mysterious Yin transformation technique here. So that's how it is. Chu Yang touched his nose. I'm obviously ignorant and inexperienced compared to this 10,000-year-old monster. The sword spirit closed his eyes. Not long after, 3 old books fell out with a bang. Mysterious Yin Transformation Technique Turning Soldier Yin Step Mysterious Yin Transformation Technique. Chu Yang looked at these 3 books in his consciousness. He couldn't help but be speechless. He suddenly had a feeling that this spirit-scraping technique is a martial art treasure trove. Also, I must remind you that this mysterious Yin transformation technique will be faster if you use it with 7 Yin cold energy or mysterious jade crystal. The sword spirit was obviously reluctant to part with the mysterious jade crystal. I understand. Chu Yang mischievously smiled. Since that's the case, you don't need to practice the martial arts of Beyond the Heavens sect. I'll teach you another one. Chu Yang's mind turned. Mysterious Yin transformation technique had caused a huge bloody disaster in the Chongtian continent thousands of years ago. Everyone thought that this was the most evil martial art. It's better not to tell Wu Qianqian my real name. I don't want to bring her endless trouble. What? Wu Qianqian's spirit was lifted. Ice Jade Divine Technique. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, I'll teach you the formula now. You must remember it well. Don't form it into words. This is the continent's top martial art. You'll be in big trouble if other people know about it. Okay. Wu Qianqian nodded vigorously. Her eyes shone. The continent's top martial art? That's great. I'll be able to close the distance between you and me. Wu Qianqian was extremely smart. She didn't need a long time to memorize the formula. Chu Yang was already thinking about the mysterious jade crystal. Sword spirit, how many mysterious jade crystals do I need? How many? The sword spirit rolled his eyes. You only need a small piece to wear. Why do you need a lot? Well, I'll take a small piece. Chu Yang looked at the space. The sword spirit was sitting cross-legged in a huge array of mysterious Yang jade and mysterious jade crystal. He said, will this array work for me? Of course it will. The sword spirit snorted. This is a yin-yang array. It can gather the purest spirit energy. Why didn't you tell me? Chu Yang asked angrily. I haven't recovered yet. The sword spirit felt somewhat guilty. He said, moreover, you have so many good things. Why did you put them all outside to set up the array? You can't do this even if you want to die. What about the small ones? Chu Yang asked. The small ones also seemed to work. The sword spirit was helpless. He had no choice but to grab a finger-sized piece of mysterious yang jade and a piece of mysterious jade crystal. He kneaded them and made them into a strange shape. He rolled his eyes and said, I know you want to leave a way out for your confidant. Take them. Chu Yang was overjoyed. They attacked from the east and the west and attacked from every angle. However, this kind of harassment could turn into reality at any time, making it difficult for others to grasp. Diwu Qingrou's harassment would be more effective the longer the battle line was stretched out. The soldiers of Iron Cloud had been harassed dozens of times in a row. And this had caused the soldiers of Iron Cloud to curse out loud. Some bad-tempered generals even began to curse. What the fuck? How could he let her sleep? Why don't you just charge over and start a fight? In the commander's tent, Tai Longcheng's expression was calm as he commanded. Now was not the time for a decisive battle. It would be really bad if he, the commander, was angered as well. As for Tai Budian, she had already gone to bed. His Majesty the Emperor had not been able to sleep well these past few days. Now he could finally have a good sleep. Diwu Qingrou's harassment was endless. The sky had not yet brightened, but he had already attacked 40 to 50 times. Sometimes he would attack from 7 or 8 directions at the same time. Then another wave of attack came as dawn approached. This time for troops came at the same time. Alarms sounded from 4 directions at the same time. The troops from the other 3 directions only harassed for a while and then retreated. Everyone was used to this. They would only use the archers to resist for a while and these people would retreat. But Gui's seemingly flat army did not retreat. They faced the rain of arrows and madly rushed into the Iron Cloud's military camp with irresistible force. This was beyond everyone's expectations. The number of this cavalry wasn't very large. It was only about 2,000 or 3,000. But every one of them was brave and unstoppable. Iron Cloud's valiant soldiers couldn't even last 1 round in front of them. Moreover, the seemingly ordinary armor on their bodies was impervious to swords and spears. The arrows were shot and issued a crisp sound of impact. Then they bounced back. They broke through the fences and the defensive positions. Then they split into small groups and scattered with a loud bang. They fell into the pit that had been dug earlier. Iron Cloud's troops were cheering when they heard an orderly roar. Then the warhorses fiercely jumped out of the pit and thrust out their spears like lightning. Screams were heard everywhere. The cavalry had split up and then suddenly converged into one. They were like an unstoppable flood as they rushed into the depths of Iron Cloud's army. Iron Cloud's high-ranking officers were furious. They mobilized their own troops to encircle and intercept them. Tai Longcheng stood on a high ground and looked at the Iron Cloud's troops from afar. He sighed and said, Golden Horse Riders Department's reputation is well deserved. He paused for a moment and then said, Diwu Qingrou is willing to pay such a price. The other high-ranking officers nodded one after another. They looked at this troop with shock in their eyes. They thought of their own subordinates. How many times would our troops be able to withstand such an elite troop if we were caught off guard? This troop of Golden Horse Riders had rushed forward for a short distance. But it had turned into an iron wall in front of them. However, this troop of riders had suddenly changed direction. They had made a turn that an ordinary cavalry troop would never have been able to make. And they had slaughtered their way out from another direction. It didn't take long, it had only been half an hour. Smoke billowed and battle cries shook the sky. Dawn had arrived. This troop of riders had slaughtered their way out of this place, and had left behind a trail of blood and flesh. They had slaughtered their way out of Iron Cloud's tight defensive perimeter, and had returned to their main camp. They had killed around 2,000 of their 2,500 men. For Great Zhao, this was undoubtedly a glorious victory. Our Great Zhao is still invincible. Iron Cloud can't withstand a single blow from us. The morale of Great Zhao's army had suddenly soared. Tai Longcheng's eyes were profound as he watched the Golden Horse Riders leave. His face was calm. Supreme Commander, why didn't we dispatch our elite troops to stop them in one fell swoop? A general next to him was somewhat angry and puzzled. This is Minister Chu's decision. Tai Longcheng indifferently said, "It's not the time to dispatch our elite troops." The dissatisfied generals suddenly became silent as soon as they heard that it was Minister Chu's decision. They remembered the arrogant king of Hell Chu who had embarrassed Diwu Qingro in front of a 1,000,000-man army. King of Hell Chu's loud roar had silenced the entire 8,000,000-man army of the two countries. No one had dared to raise any objections. No one knew that Diwu Qingro had been standing alone on the roof of the Supreme Commander's tent that night. He had been looking at the twinkling stars in the sky. His face had turned ashen. Diwu Qingro had arrived here after he had arranged the assault strategy. He had been standing there for the entire night. The soldiers knew that Prime Minister Diwu had gone to sleep, but they didn't know that he hadn't slept at all. Why is this? Diwu Qingro tightly knitted his brows and muttered to himself. The stars had only blurred the mysteries of heaven the last time. But why did the universe suddenly turn upside down this time? Great Zhao, which was as bright as the sun, suddenly dimmed. And the Emperor Star of Iron Cloud had always been dim and obscure. But it had suddenly shone with boundless radiance. Diwu Qingro was puzzled. The last time I had seen the celestial phenomenon was when the two sides were entangled. It was obscure and difficult to understand. But it's so clear now. What happened during this period of time? Diwu Qingro was confused. He only felt that his thoughts were in a mess. He didn't know that Tai Butian would have been so ashamed that she would have been unable to show her face if he had asked her about it. After all, she had saved Chu Yang that night before dawn. The intelligent star has dimmed. A large number of military stars have fallen. The north is shining with red light. The south is bowing and surrendering to the north. But what's going on with this star? Diwu Qingro stared at the night sky. His brows knitted tighter and tighter. A star was shining in the sky within his observation range. It was emitting a dazzling brilliance. The nearby stars were dim and lightless. Perhaps they couldn't be seen at all. This was the Emperor Star. However, above this star there was another star that shone brightly. The Emperor Star's incomparable brilliance was unable to suppress this star. Furthermore, the two stars didn't repel each other at all. Instead, they seemed to be getting along very well. The auxiliary star should have been below the Emperor Star. But why is this auxiliary star above the Emperor Star? The master is weak and the ministers are strong. This is a great calamity. But why is it so harmonious? The auxiliary star had never appeared before. So why did it suddenly appear this time? Could it be that this auxiliary star is King of Hell Chu? Diwu Qingro was distressed as he pondered. There's only one possibility for such a situation to occur. And that is, something happened between King of Hell Chu and Tai Butian. But what could have happened that could have caused such a huge change in the celestial phenomenon? The wisdom star has dimmed. Could it be that I, Diwu Qingro, will face an unpredictable calamity? Diwu Qingro stood in a daze for a long time. He felt as if his thoughts were in a mess. He couldn't sort them out at all. This sudden change in the celestial phenomenon had thoroughly overturned Diwu Qingro's understanding of the celestial phenomenon. He felt as if his head was about to explode as he thought about it. The Emperor Star is strong. It's clear that it's as bright as the sun. Since that's the case, it's the will of heaven. But the Emperor Star had always been shining in Great Zhao before this. The red light and auspicious aura were clearly in Great Zhao. Why did it suddenly change? Isn't this change playing with me, Diwu Qingro, for the rest of my life? Diwu Qingro's face revealed endless frustration and anger. Heaven, why are you playing with me like this? The Emperor Star has always been in the south for 25 years. But it suddenly shifted to the north at this decisive moment. This is the will of heaven. How can you make such a joke? Chapter 394. 25 years ago, Diwu Qingro had seen the celestial phenomenon. Therefore, he had shouldered the mission of his clan and had come to the lower three heavens with the ambition of unifying the world. Following the heavens' will was the way to success. How could Diwu Qingro have chosen the wrong side with the celestial phenomenon as a guide? Therefore he had entered Great Zhao as he wished. He had slowly grasped power, and had eventually become an ambitious and ruthless person who could command the world by himself. However, the celestial phenomenon had suddenly changed at the time of the decisive battle. This was undoubtedly telling him, all your efforts are just a joke. You are being toyed with, that's all. The black celestial phenomenon you saw is fake. It's fake. The real thing has only appeared now. This was equivalent to toying with Diwu Qingro's life's work. Why would Diwu Qingro have sought refuge with Great Zhao if he had known that the heavens would eventually belong to Iron Cloud? He had suddenly changed his mind when he could no longer look back. Moreover, it was an irresistible heaven's will. How could this not make Diwu Qingro mentally and physically exhausted? Even if it's heaven's will, I will make heaven's will pay the price. However, Diwu Qingro's elegant beard was stained with blood. His eyes suddenly turned gloomy as he fiercely muttered to himself, even if I can't reverse it, Diwu Qingro can't be humiliated. Even if heaven's will can't be reversed, I will bury these 8 million soldiers with me. I want the world to remember the name of Diwu Qingro. The armies of the two countries frequently killed each other in the next half-month. The war had reached a stalemate. Diwu Qingro's crafty schemes came out one after another. He created a diversion in the east and attacked in the west. It seemed as if his ingenious schemes were endless. Iron Cloud had Tai Long Cheng, Tai Butian, and King of Helchu on their side. Diwu Qingro's strategy could be described as unfathomable. His insight into the war situation was so keen that it made people's hearts cold. Diwu Qingro had the overall situation under his control. He wantonly dispatched his army. The Golden Horse Riders Department's army was especially unpredictable. Diwu Qingro knew that his original arrangement was useless now that King of Helchu had returned. They would only be defeated by the enemy if they were to disperse. Therefore, he formed another army under Jing Menghun's command. The lethality of this army became even more terrifying. There were dozens of battles every day, but there was no sign of a decisive battle. Tai Long Cheng, Tai Butian, and Chu Yang had been forced to separate under his immense pressure. He confronted Diwu Qingro. However, during this period of time, Chu Yang had fallen into a strange state of mind. Things started half a month ago. Ever since Chu Yang had given Wu Qingqing the secret manual, she had been allowed to cultivate it by herself. But on the night of the next 2 days, Wu Qingqing came to Chu Yang's tent uneasily. She wanted to say something but hesitated. "What is it?" Chu Yang asked. "Chu Yang, I seem to have broken through." Wu Qingqing was a little uncertain. With some fear and helplessness she said, I know I didn't act recklessly. I just followed the mental cultivation method of the Ice Jade Divine Technique and then I discovered the bottleneck of this mental cultivation method. I didn't feel it, but I advanced to the 4th grade of Martial Master. Chu Yang's eyes widened. "Let me see. Even if you are a genius, you can't be this fast." Chu Yang grabbed Wu Qingqing's wrist. His energy entered her body and circled around her meridians. He didn't find any abnormalities. Unwilling to give up, he probed again. Again he only found vigorous vitality. "There is no problem." Chu Yang withdrew his hand and scratched his head. "No problem?" Wu Qingqing was a little uneasy. "Then should I continue cultivating?" "Cultivate. You should be happy that your strength has increased. Why are you panicking?" Chu Yang said. He thought to himself, it seems that she was already on the verge of breaking through the 3rd grade of Martial Master. Chuan, now is the time for a breakthrough. Yes, it must be like this. Then on the next night Wu Qingqing came again. She wanted to say something but hesitated. "What is it?" Chu Yang asked. "This Chuan, I seem to have broken through again." Wu Qingqing stammered. "Huh?" Chu Yang was shocked. "What grade is it now? Could it be that she advanced from 4th grade to 5th grade in one day? Isn't this too fast?" "Martial Master grade." Wu Qingqing was flustered. She wanted to cry. "What is going on? How can I break through with just one practice? Could there be a problem?" Chu Yang was dumbfounded. After a thorough examination, Chu Yang was sure that there was nothing wrong with Wu Qingqing's body. Moreover, the Xianin revolving technique was also operating normally. He was finally sure, there is nothing wrong. Wu Qingqing left with a heavy heart. Chu Yang also sat down with a heavy heart. So strange. She broke through with just one practice. She broke through with just one practice? Chu Yang was thinking, what is going on? This girl didn't eat any treasures. Wu Qingqing didn't come for 3 days. Chu Yang also let out a sigh of relief. But on that day, after dealing with Diwu Qingro's attack, Wu Qingqing came again. Chu Yang. What? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. You didn't break through this time? I broke through to Martial Great Master. Ha! Minister Chu staggered and almost fell to the ground. Chu Yang had always shocked others with his cultivation speed. Now he finally had a taste of it himself. In half a month, Wu Qingqing and big sister Wu Qingqing rushed to Martial Great Master grade unstoppably. Towards the end, Chu Yang was shocked until he was numb. It was really too fierce. Later, Chu Yang really couldn't sit still and asked the Sword Spirit. Then the Sword Spirit was also shocked. He asked Chu Yang to call Wu Qingqing over and let him take her pulse. After that, the sword spirit was speechless for a long time. What's wrong? Chu Yang asked anxiously. I can't help it. This is really... The sword spirit said speechlessly, this is really heaven's will. Heaven's will? Chu Yang blinked. This Miss Wu Qingqing actually has the Shen defense body, which is rarely seen in 10,000 years. The sword spirit said speechlessly, and I originally had a few female cultivation techniques here. But for convenience I took out the one beside me. And this is the most powerful one. Chu Yang asked in confusion. Why? Is it inappropriate? It's not that it's inappropriate, but this technique is completely tailor-made for her. The sword spirit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You still remember the name of this technique? Xianyin transformation? Pill? The Xianyin transformation. The sword spirit sighed. Only after the transformation can one form the Xianyin female body. And this confidant of yours was actually born with the Xianyin body. What do you think is wrong? Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. You mean, she omitted the transfer procedure? The sword spirit nodded speechlessly. That's right. She started cultivating the Xianyin qi. For her, the first half of this technique is equivalent to a smooth path. There are no bottlenecks at all. She just needs to circulate the technique and she can easily advance. Asterisk asterisk. Chu Yang's eyes widened and he couldn't help but swear. Because of his agitation he actually said this sentence. And at this time Chu Yang was still taking Wu Qingqing's pulse. This was equivalent to holding her hand and saying, fuck. What kind of image was this? Wu Qingqing's face immediately turned red. She fiercely rolled her eyes at him and raised her eyebrows. What did you say? Cough cough. Chu Yang coughed awkwardly and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. I said, fuck. After fuck, my martial power might not be as high as yours. Humph. Wu Qingqing rolled her eyes at him. She didn't know what this guy was thinking, so she didn't argue with him. But her face became redder and redder. In Chu Yang's mind, the sword spirit was already laughing. You're such a hooligan. It's all your fault. Chu Yang flew into a rage out of humiliation. He said fiercely, continue. Her advancement now is equivalent to the female Xianyin qi in her meridians being completely transformed into Xianyin qi. It's almost over. But after that, she has the yin-yang dual jades in her body. She also has the Xianyin body and can cultivate Shen qi. This progress can only be described as terrifying. What's the highest level of achievement? Chu Yang asked. Can she become a martial emperor? Martial emperor? The sword spirit disdainfully curled his lips. Martial emperor is nothing. Martial monarch? Martial monarch? Nothing. Asterisk asterisk. Martial saint? Chu Yang's eyes had already turned into bells. Martial fate. The sword spirit muttered. Chu Yang thought that he was going to say martial saint, again? Nothing. At this time, the sword spirit finally opened his mouth. If she doesn't break down halfway and by chance she should be able to cultivate to martial saint or even higher. It should be possible. But this path is full of difficulties and obstacles. It's easier said than done for a woman to cultivate all the way to the top. Chu Yang was stunned. Martial saint and even higher? Wouldn't that make her a supreme martial artist? His heart automatically ignored the last two sentences. It's a pity that the person who created the revolving Shen technique didn't cultivate to the supreme martial artist level. So, at the final stage if she wants to go further, she can only create it herself. The sword spirit sighed. Because the creator of this technique, the Xianyin martial fate, didn't have the Xianyin body at the beginning of cultivation. Chu Yang was finally really shocked. Coming back to his senses, he looked at Wu Qingqing, whose face was full of anticipation and uneasiness. He sighed and said, there's nothing wrong with the technique you're cultivating. But, when Wu Qingqing heard him say, but, her heart jumped. She asked, what's wrong? But it's too compatible with your physique. That's why your cultivation speed is so fast. Chu Yang warned seriously, after this don't let anyone test your physique. Also, don't tell anyone about the technique you're cultivating. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for you to grow. I understand. Wu Qingqing nodded firmly. She asked with a face full of expectation, can I cultivate to the martial king level with this technique? Because in her opinion, the lowest standard to enter the upper three heavens was the martial king level. So she was very concerned about this martial king level. Martial king level? Chu Yang wanted to say, maybe you'll be a martial king level after cultivating for half a year. But after thinking about it, he didn't say it. He said, absolutely. And it'll be very fast as long as you work hard enough. I'll work hard. Wu Qingqing clenched her small fist. Chapter 395. Sword Spirit heaved a long sigh and said, "But you have to go to the upper three heavens or the lower three heavens to reach a certain level. But you can't improve in the lower three heavens." Chu Yang frowned. He looked at the pleasantly surprised Wu Qingqing and said, "I will ask for her opinion when the time comes." Diwu Qingro had been venting his energy like a madman during this stalemate. Iron Cloud could only passively defend. Tai Long Cheng felt that this super abnormal phenomenon was very inconceivable. The wind doesn't last forever. The rain doesn't last forever. Diwu Qingro understood this principle. He would get tired and take a break from his indiscriminate bombardment. But Iron Cloud would counterattack at that time, and Diwu Qingro would feel very uncomfortable. Why would this wise man of his generation make such an obvious mistake? Chu Yang didn't feel anything about this. He only calmly looked at his 300,000-strong army. Chu Yang was like an immovable mountain no matter how Diwu Qingro bombarded indiscriminately. He was sure that Diwu Qingro had a plan. Diwu Qingro's decisive battle would come when the dagger would be revealed. Moreover, this was a battle tactic. Both sides were tired. Great Zhao soldiers were physically tired, but their spirits were high. They could see that their mortal enemy could only let go, and they could attack to their heart's content. As a soldier, this was incomparable to their spirit. On the other hand, Iron Cloud's side was sullen and depressed. They could only withdraw and defend in the face of the enemy's indiscriminate bombardment. They had to use all their strength to prevent their position from being destroyed. How could they not be sullen? But they couldn't act blindly without thinking. Diwu Qingro's army would fiercely gather once there was a gap in the defensive line. Then they would expand the gap and attack the entire army. Everyone could see this clearly. This was because every time they attacked they would send out 3 troops from different directions. 2 of the troops would be on the lookout while the last one would charge and attack. It was obvious that as long as there was even the slightest mistake on your side, the other 2 troops would immediately join in and tear apart the gap. The other attacking troops would have an opportunity to take advantage of the situation if they were to deploy troops from other barracks. Diwu Qingro's battle tactic was crazy and effective. Chu Yang had a faint feeling. Diwu Qingro seems to be deliberately forcing the armies of the 2 countries to a point of eruption. Once they are at the end of their rope, they will fight to the death. Chu Yang had this realization, but he couldn't believe it. What? Diwu Qingro had no reason to do this. Therefore, he could only slowly continue to speculate, and then steadily deal with the storm-like harassment and attacks of Great Zhao's army. The Great Zhao's army had arrived like a gust of wind. Then they would disperse like an ebbing tide after a short period of time. And it seemed as if they didn't know what fatigue was. However, the Golden Horse Riders Department's attack that Chu Yang was looking forward to didn't appear. "Minister, our army's morale is somewhat unstable." Chu Yang was in the tent when Wu Kuangyun walked in with large strides. He looked somewhat anxious. "Everyone is feeling very depressed. If this goes on, when will it end?" "Is it our brother's morale that is unstable, or is it your morale that is unstable?" Chu Yang raised his head and looked at him. Actually, I just came to ask if Diyun, the commander-in-chief and His Majesty had any instructions." Wu Kuangyun's dark face turned red. "Wait." Chu Yang suddenly felt that the morale of the army would plummet if this continued. Wu Kuangyun had a bad temper. But he was also a famous general in the army. So, how could the ordinary troops remain calm if even he was like this? Therefore, some measures must be taken. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. He beckoned Wu Kuangyun to come closer and said, "After you go down, do this and this. When the Great Zhao's army comes again, do this and this." Wu Kuangyun beamed with joy. He nodded repeatedly. Then he gave Chu Yang a thumbs up in admiration. Then he walked away like a gust of wind. Wu Qingqing couldn't help but tremble behind Chu Yang. She thought, this Chu Yang is really mischievous. He doesn't forget to play pranks in such a battle. That night, a howl was heard along with the sound of hoof beats. The Great Zhao's army was like a pack of wild wolves. At this moment, the Iron Cloud's army suddenly burst into laughter. Aha! This gang of idiots is here again. Look, this gang of idiots is running back and forth like dogs every night. It's really fucking cool. Brothers, come out and watch the show. Yes, we are just sitting here and waiting for this gang of idiots to act. Motherfucker, it's really cool. It costs money to go to the theater, but it's free here. The Iron Cloud's army suddenly swept away the depressing and dispirited mood of the past few days along with the expansion of this discussion. Everyone started to clamor. Then the army of thousands of people started to shout loudly, "Stupid C***T. You guys are here. Idiots, are you tired?" The great Zhao's army had arrived with great momentum. But they were met with such treatment. They immediately flew into a rage. They fought for a while and both sides suffered casualties. Then they retreated. Then they heard howls behind them. "Idiots, are you leaving again? Idiots, come back earlier." The great Zhao's general almost fell off his horse. What's more, under the leadership and encouragement of Wu Kuangyun, this group of straightforward men worked together to compose a song within half a day. Then they promoted it throughout the entire army. The song was called, "Idiots, Are You Tired?" The lyrics were as follows. "Idiots, are you tired of being driven like a dog every night? Idiots, can you ride a horse? Can you fight a war? Are you tired of being treated like a toy all night? Idiots, are you tired? Oh hey idiots, although you are bitter, although you are tired, but our hearts are comforted by your hardships every day. Ow, 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 ow. Idiots, you are bitter, you are tired. Idiots, you are a good treasure for us to relax. A good treasure." Thump, 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 thump. Therefore, when the great Zhao's army came again that night, everyone was busy fighting the enemy, but they also built an earthen platform. On the earthen platform, there was a military band of several thousand people. The gongs and drums sounded together, and under the command of the band, 3,000 burly men simultaneously raised their thick necks, and opened their wolf-like voices, and began to sing in a grand and majestic voice, "Idiot! Idiot! Are you tired?" The surrounding area was heavily guarded. In fact, there was even a special group of guards. Therefore, the singers were only in charge of shouting as loudly as they could. Their voices were like thunder. This was rehearsed. Tens of millions of people were shouting and singing at the same time. And this suppressed the sounds of tens of thousands of people fighting. Therefore, the good Cloud's army was grinning from ear to ear. They were happy as they killed the enemy. Some of them were seriously injured. But they were crying out in pain and laughing at the same time. They were very happy. There was very little entertainment in the military camp. So, everyone was in high spirits now that there was such a good program. Many people were waving their sabers while singing along with the melody. The great Zhao's surprise troops were so angry that their bellies almost burst. They even abandoned their original plan and attacked the earthen platform full of singers. But this operation led to the complete annihilation of the entire army. There were casualties after the battle. But everyone was in high spirits. The usual depressing atmosphere after a battle was swept away. Even the great Zhao's mouths were humming. They were actually looking forward to the great Zhao's idiots' attack that night. Minister Chu's invention had thoroughly solved many problems for the Iron Cloud's army. In just one night, the entire 3 camps of the Iron Cloud were singing, "Idiots, are you tired?" Idiots singing. The singing became louder and louder. And everyone was fighting with more vigor. There was a soldier who had been slashed in the chest by the enemy. But he tilted his head, looked at the enemy soldier and said with a smile, "Idiots, are you tired? Do you know how comforting I am?" These words enraged the great Zhao's soldier. He ferociously rushed forward, "I'll let you comfort me." However, this Iron Cloud soldier had a carefree smile on his face. He pulled out a saber from his chest, and stabbed it into his enemy's heart. Iron Cloud had been on the defensive side of this night's offensive and defensive battle. And they had gained the complete upper hand. Moreover, several enemy troops had been left behind. And they had been completely annihilated. In the commander's tent, Tai Long Cheng was slapping his thighs and rocking back and forth. He couldn't stop laughing. He smacked his lips. Fuck. This king of Helchu is really high, ha ha ha. Tai Ji Tian was on one side. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was speechless. What could she say? She had nothing to say about Chu Yang's pranks, especially when it came to pranks that only had benefits and no harm. Tai Bu Tian could only choose to cover her ears and not listen. She could only smile bitterly. Tai Ji Tian had a clear understanding of this. Men are born with a strong tendency to swear. But Tai Bu Tian wasn't in the mood to think about this matter. She was thinking about another problem. A very serious problem. This problem made her flustered. Great Zhao's barracks. Diwu Qingrou's face was serious. He looked a little pale. This situation, where did it first come from? It came from Wu Kuangyun's barracks. That bastard. The general's face was full of hatred. Wu Kuangyun. Diwu Qingrou chuckled. His eyes flashed with a cold light. That's right. According to our previous estimates, King of Helchu should be in charge of Wu Kuangyun's army. He smiled faintly. Now it's exactly the same as my estimates. King of Hell Chu should be in charge of Wu Kuangyun's army. Such a strategy is vulgar and seems naive. But it has a strong effect on raising the morale of the troops. This isn't something that Wu Kuangyun can come up with. King of Hell Chu is behind this. Diwu Qingro came to an unquestionable conclusion. The generals were dumbfounded. King of Hell Chu? Prime Minister, what should we do next? The generals asked in unison. Mengue, are you ready? Diwu Qingro asked. Chapter 396. Good. Diwu Qingro's eyes flashed with a ruthless light as he said, in that case tonight's raid will be the last time. Dispatch the Golden Horse Riders Department and give Iron Cloud a heavy blow. Then immediately withdraw the troops. Withdraw the troops. The generals turned pale with fright. Yes, withdraw the troops. Once the raid is over, immediately withdraw the troops. Leave the tents here. Don't touch anything else. It's enough to completely withdraw the troops, Diwu Qingro said casually. Yes. The generals didn't understand, but they knew that Diwu Qingro had a brilliant plan. Their blind trust in Diwu Qingro made them execute his orders without hesitation. Order the infantry to withdraw immediately. When the cavalry comes back, wrap the horses' hooves with cotton and quietly withdraw. Diwu Qingro added, make sure no one knows. Prime Minister, isn't this too hasty? If we hastily withdraw, we will have to go over this mountain. And, once this mountain is occupied by the enemy, it will mean that our 10 years of expeditions will be in vain. Moreover, Iron Cloud will have one more natural stronghold. This will be very detrimental to Great Zhao's unification plan. The Heavenly Dragon General Yu Han frowned. Dragon General Li Yi also nodded on the side. He agreed with His Majesty and Yu Han's words. Hasty, it must be hasty. If everything needs to be planned before acting, I'm afraid Iron Cloud will react at that time. Especially King of Hell Chu. I'm afraid the entire strategy will change once he reacts. Diwu Qingro's eyes flashed as he said, Yu Han, you should know what I mean about this retreat. Why are you still asking? But the military's morale will inevitably be shaken. Moreover, if we attack back, the casualties will be very heavy. It will be equivalent to perishing together with the enemy. Yu Han's thin face was somewhat heavy and sad. The Golden Horse Riders Department had been constantly making arrangements. How could Yu Han not know what they were doing? Yu Han's body was covered in cold sweat when he saw those vicious arrangements. The enemy had fallen into the trap. But his side didn't have much protection. It was bound to perish together. How could this heavenly dragon, who had always loved his troops, feel comfortable? Therefore, for the first time in his life, he questioned Diwu Qingro's orders. You only need to carry out the orders. Diwu Qingro looked at him gently and said, Yu Han, sacrifices are inevitable in war. Yu Han heaved a long sigh. That night, Great Zhao's attack was even more ferocious. It seemed as if they were covering the sky and covering the earth. Moreover, they didn't stop for the entire night. However, Iron Cloud's side had already recovered. Moreover, along with this violent attack, it clearly conveyed a thought. It seems that this kind of attack is about to stop. Tai Long Cheng was in the commander's tent. His brows wrinkled as he listened to the sounds of the heaven-shaking bandits outside. Several of his trusted generals were by his side. Diwu Qingro's attack had stopped. This meant that the time for Iron Cloud to counterattack had arrived. Therefore, the generals could not wait any longer. It won't be that simple. Tai Long Cheng faintly felt that Diwu Qingro definitely had more tricks up his sleeve. He waved his hand and said, let's wait until dawn. In the face of Diwu Qingro's unpredictable strategy, Tai Long Cheng did not dare to take any risks. He would rather give up this great opportunity than act blindly without thinking. In addition, immediately report this situation to His Majesty and Minister Chu. Let's see what they have to say. Tai Long Cheng made a decision. If the enemy retreats after dawn and His Majesty and Minister Chu have no objections, we will immediately pursue and attack. On the other side, Chu Yang had been standing on the top of the flagpole when the chaos had just started. He had been quietly watching for a while. Then, he had come down with a heavy expression on his face. If he had guessed correctly, perhaps Diwu Qingro would reveal his true intentions tonight. However, he did not know what kind of arrangements this ambitious and ruthless man would make. He came down and saw Wu Qianqian standing beside the commander's tent. She was dressed in black. Her long hair and sleeves were fluttering in the wind. Tonight should come to an end, Wu Qingqing said in a low voice. Chu Yang looked at her. I can feel Wu Qingrou's determination in this attack. Wu Qingqing casually said, there are 3 reasons. First, Wu Qingrou did not prepare an army camp tonight. Second, Wu Qingrou's total number of troops is close to 1 million if we calculate according to the number of troops he has invested. This is equivalent to a semi-decisive battle. However, it is taking place in the dark night. So, people can't feel the flavor of a decisive battle. As for the last reason, it is my feeling. Chu Yang looked at Wu Qingqing with some gratification. Wu Qingqing could see this point. It showed that she had matured in all aspects. She could take charge of a whole area alone. Especially the last sentence that Wu Qingqing had said with a very certain tone, my feeling. It was a kind of telepathy that belonged to a decision-making person. This was already an outstanding and powerful ability, especially when the opponent was Wu Qingrou. This was even rarer. What would you do if you were Wu Qingrou? Chu Yang probed. If I were him, I would immediately attack after tonight's decisive battle if I could expand the results of the battle. If I couldn't, I would retreat immediately. Although this battlefield is big, it can't accommodate 8 million people at the same time. 1 million for each side is already the limit. Tonight is a semi-decisive battle. However, it will decide the outcome of the battle and the direction of the war. It can't happen tonight and it certainly can't happen in the future. Therefore, I would retreat and plan slowly. I would conserve my forces and make a comeback. This is the best plan. Wu Qingqing paused and said, however, the elite cavalry of Golden Horse Riders Department hasn't appeared yet. This is my concern. If they don't appear, Wu Qingrou will have other ideas. If they appear and can't capture Ironclad's camp by daybreak, they will retreat. You've seen half of it. Chu Yang looked at her happily. He praised, but it's already not easy. The only half that I haven't seen is Wu Qingrou's character and Wu Qingrou's insidious arrangements. Wu Qingrou is not a person who gives up easily. If he wants to give up, there must be a reason. If he wants to withdraw, there must be a backup plan. Chu Yang said slowly, therefore even if Wu Qingrou wants to withdraw, it will only be a trap. Trap? Wu Qingqing asked in confusion. Yes, have you seen the camps of both sides? Chu Yang asked himself in his heart. At the same time, he recalled Wu Qingrou's arrangements on the roof of the Prime Minister's manor. He slowly calculated. His words also became more and more intermittent as he continued to calculate. Our Ironclad side has a majestic pass to the north and steep mountains on both sides. We can attack and retreat. Moreover, we don't have to worry about the rear. But Wu Qingrou only needs to break through from the front. His path will be smooth. Yes. Wu Qingqing looked at Chu Yang in bewilderment. She thought, isn't this something that everyone knows? But look at Wu Qingrou's tough self. He has clearly put out a dragon coiling and tiger entrenched in the wind. Looking from afar, it looked like a huge dragon was coiling over, but it was holding its head high. Moreover, behind the dragon's body is a tiger's body. When the dragon moves, the wind and clouds gather. When the tiger roars, the fierce tiger comes down from the mountain. This is the posture of swallowing Ironclad in one fell swoop. This proves that Wu Qingrou has made up his mind to fight when he came here. How can he retreat so easily? Chu Yang frowned. He seemed to be asking Wu Qingqing but also seemed to be asking himself. But there is one thing that is very strange. Originally, Great Zhao's camp was further forward. But after Wu Qingrou arrived, they unknowingly retreated 18 miles. Most of the main camp spread to the flat slope halfway up the mountain. Moreover, it changed from a horizontal formation to a square formation. In other words, after Wu Qingrou arrived, it became a dragon coiling and tiger entrenched camp. This shows that Wu Qingrou wants to take advantage of the terrain. Chu Yang rubbed his eyebrows and said with difficulty. He paused every time he said a sentence. It was as if he was pouring out his heart and lungs to analyze. This kind of analysis consumed a lot of energy. It was unimaginable. Especially analyzing the thoughts of the ambitious and ruthless Wu Qingrou, it was even more difficult. Setting up camp at the back of the mountain means that Great Zhao has an endless supply of food. This is a safe method. Moreover, by retreating 18 miles, we can avoid the exhaustion of transporting grain. How can this be called a conspiracy? Wu Qingqing frowned in contemplation and raised an objection. You did not see the terrain clearly. Chu Yang pulled Wu Qingqing into the tent and came to the sand table. Pointing at the terrain on the sand table, he said, "Look, Wu Qingrou set up camp here. It is foolproof. Look at the mountain behind him. The terrain of the mountain. It's very flat. This is also the condition created for the supply team. Even if we retreat, there will be no danger. This is a perfect plan. Wu Qingqing stared at the sand table with her pretty eyes. What if this mountain is Ironcloud's team? Chu Yang pointed at the mountain and asked. If Ironcloud's team is there, then attacking Diwu Qingro would be as easy as blowing off dust. Wu Qingqing was very puzzled. How could Ironcloud's team appear there? If they could, then the war would have ended long ago. This mountain is not high, but the terrain is very flat. There is no big slope. It is suitable for cavalry to charge. If the infantrymen are on high ground, they can display 3 times the fighting strength. As for the archers, spear throwers, knife throwers and axe throwers, it is the best place to use their skills. Once they attack from the top of the mountain and attack Diwu Qingro's camp, they will be meat on the chopping board. They can be slaughtered at will. Even turning around and running away will become an extravagant hope. Because running away in a hurry will not be as fast as the opponent's speed. Chu Yang spoke faster and faster. If Diwu Qingro deliberately creates a situation where they run away in panic, will we chase after them? Of course we will chase. Wu Qingqing said without hesitation. But what if Diwu Qingro set up an ambush on the top of the mountain? Chu Yang asked. When our army enters Ironcloud's camp to collect supplies, they will suddenly attack like a tiger coming down from the mountain. Wu Qingqing suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Chapter 397. Zhuge Clan. Chu Yang's body shook. He had already guessed that Diwu Qingro was a member of the Zhuge clan, which was one of the big ruling clans of the upper 3 heavens. However, he still felt somewhat shaken when he heard Diwu Qingro admit it himself. You may not be familiar with the surname Diwu. Diwu Qingru smiled bitterly, but the glory of our Diwu clan is incomparable to that of the Zhuge clan. Diwu clan? Chu Yang frowned and racked his brains. But he still couldn't figure it out. He said, Please enlighten me. The Zhuge clan had 10,000 years of glory and was already a big shot in the entire heavenly layer. But who would remember that our Diwu clan had 20,000 years of glory before the Zhuge clan? It's been 30,000 years since then. Diwu Qingru smiled bitterly, but his voice was still soft. Our Diwu clan was the dominant clan chosen by the 7th generation Tribulation Sword Master. And it was the most important and resourceful clan among the dominant clans. Among the big clans it was ranked 5th. 10,000 years later, our clan's glory was still the same. Our ancestor Diwu Qingru was born in the heavenly layer, and he was outstanding. Plus, he was very friendly with the 7th generation Tribulation Sword Master. So, 8 of the big clans declined under the Tribulation Sword, but our Diwu clan flourished for another 10,000 years. I see. Chu Yang sighed. So this involves an ancient divine item like the Tribulation Sword? A clan with tens of thousands of years. It's really unimaginable. Diwu Qingru smiled slightly. His eyes flashed and he continued, the 8th generation Tribulation Sword Master was born, and the world was turned upside down again. The Diwu clan finally declined, and the new one to replace it was the Zhuge clan. I see. Chu Yang sighed, what a pity. And the remaining people of my Diwu clan were only 2 or 3 youngsters. The others, including several martial saints and dozens of martial monarchs, were all buried in the Tribulation Sword. 10,000 years of inheritance was destroyed overnight. We had no choice but to live under someone else's roof and be taken in as slaves by the Zhuge clan. Servant? Chu Qin sucked in a cold breath. However, after thousands of years of evolution, our Diwu clan was an intelligent clan after all. Although we couldn't rise again, we succeeded in getting rid of our slave status and became a servant of the Zhuge clan. Furthermore, his position was gradually stabilizing. In the last 1,000 years, he was already able to attend the academy with his clan's younger brothers. He could dabble in anything, whether it was martial arts or military strategy. Diwu Qingro's eyes lit up. Chu Yang remained silent. This was because he was thinking about Diwu Qingro's words. These words had shaken his mind. Several saint-level ancestors and dozens of monarch-level experts were all buried in the calamity. Saint-level. Monarch rank. If Diwu Qingro's words were true, then there would be many hidden powerhouses in the upper 3 heavens. When the Diwu clan was destroyed, several martial saints and dozens of martial monarchs died, and this was just one family. However, he would have to face all the ruling clans of the upper 3 heavens in the future. This was the fate of the Calamity Sword Master. Fuck. Chu Yang's heart beat wildly. My surname is Diwu. When I was born, my father named me Qingtian. Diwu Qingtian. Diwu Qingro smiled gently. It seemed as if he was talking about someone else's matter. The Zhuge clan's younger brothers are divided into two lines. Although we all cultivate martial arts, there is a strict rule. Cultivators can't be stained with blood. Use wisdom to conquer the world. Use wisdom to cut off karma. Diwu Qingro laughed. Although the Zhuge clan has many strong cultivators in the past 10,000 years, they can only use their wisdom to solve problems. They can't use their martial arts. In this way, under such pressure, all the Zhuge clan's cultivators try their best to develop their brains. Of course, they become smarter and smarter. I understand. Chu Yang really understood. He had to admit that the Zhuge clan's ancestor was really far-sighted. Such a decision was simply wise to the extreme, because it could ensure that the Zhuge clan's intelligence would become higher and higher from generation to generation. Martial arts complemented each other. That is the only way to prosper forever. You only have extremely powerful martial strength and no wisdom. You can only be used as a tool in the hands of others. A person who didn't know a word could become a strong martial artist, but he would never become a wise man. This was the fundamental difference between a wise man and a martial artist. The overbearing way of martial arts is gentleness. Diwu Qingro said, every generation of cultivators is an outstanding younger brother of the clan. And in the clan their status is also very high. So, after the clan chose me as a cultivator, they changed my name to Diwu Qingro. They used the name Qingro to remind me of my identity as a cultivator. Diwu Qingro smiled faintly. I see. Chu Yang nodded. Only now did he understand why a man like Diwu Qingro would use such a gentle name. 30 years ago, when the 10,000-year period was approaching, the 5 wise men of the Zhuge clan activated a secret technique. The 5 wise men exhausted their efforts and paid the price of the 5 men's lives. They clearly calculated that the next master of Calamity Sword was about to come out, but the fate of the Zhuge clan was not optimistic. So, they wanted to go against the heavens and change. Diwu Qingro said. Go against the heavens and change fate. Chu Yang was really shocked this time. It turned out that he was not the only one in the world who had this idea. Or it should be said that we need to follow the heavens' fate, but we need to borrow fate. Diwu Qingro thought for a while and finally slowly explained again, and this requires the fate of the lower 3 heavens to complement. Do you understand? Chu Yang nodded. It is to extract the fate of a country through a certain method to your Zhuge clan. If it goes well, it can continue for another 10,000 years, right? Yes. Diwu Qingro looked at Chu Yang in amazement. And this is the reason why you, Diwu Qingro, came to Great Zhao. Is that right? Chu Yang asked. Yes. Diwu Qingro said, simply put, it is to overturn the whole world with one person's strength. Moreover, it must be so huge that even the Emperor's dragon energy cannot suppress it. Then, through this person, the entire clan's wise men will set up a fate channel and extract it directly from the firmament with the power of the stars at the cost of this person's life and spiritual energy. This mission has fallen on my shoulders. Because once it is done, this person's life will be sharply reduced, and it is not impossible that he will die. The ordinary clan's younger brothers still care about their own lives, but I, Diwu Qingro, have the ambition to conquer the world. As long as I can unify the world in my hands, even if I die immediately, so what? How many years can a person live in this life? If I don't do anything, would I live up to my peerless talent? Moreover, at that time I was also looking at the star's fortune technique. But I comprehended a strange technique that others can't comprehend, and that is the stargazing technique. I could accurately grasp the general trend of the world. Although this is limited to the Emperor's star technique, it was very beneficial to this plan. Diwu Qingro heaved a heavy sigh as he said this. So what if it is the Emperor's star technique? So what if it is accurate? The weather changes at the most critical time. So, my master and I came to the lower 3 heavens when we were 20 years old. My master vomited blood and died in order to set up a formation to absorb fate. But before he died, he had a burst of inspiration and adopted an orphan. That orphan was my junior brother. At that time, my master's last words were, my junior brother will help me complete this task and then he will die. Only my junior brother and I were left and we depended on each other. I taught my junior brother wholeheartedly and looked for opportunities. Finally, 5 years later, the weather changed and Great Zhao became the master of the world. So, I came to Great Zhao with a bumpy road and slowly worked my way up. My junior brother was always hidden in the dark, and when I had a firm foothold, he left me and went to Iron Cloud. Diwu Qingro's eyes revealed a trace of pain, but he was killed by you. Killed by me? Chu Yang was surprised. Who? Teng Xianxing. Diwu Qingro looked at Chu Yang with a malicious gaze and said word by word, "That was my junior brother." Chu Yang was stunned, and then his heart suddenly became cold. Because he remembered Diwu Qingro's words. "Before my master died, he adopted an orphan, and that orphan was my junior brother. My master's last words were, 'My junior brother will help me complete this task.'" This ability to calculate could be said to be heaven-defying. Chu Yang clearly remembered that in his previous life, Diwu Qingro dominated Great Zhao, and the most difficult bone to chew, Iron Cloud, was completely destroyed by Diwu Qingro and Tang Xen Sheng. It could be said that Tang Xen Sheng really helped Diwu Qingro complete his most difficult task. Diwu Qingro's master actually calculated this before his death. This made Chu Yang's heart become even more fearful of the Zhuge clan's wise men. They really had the ability to see through heaven's secrets. Diwu Qingro seemed to know what Chu Yang was thinking and said casually, "You don't have to worry. This ability comes at the cost of one's life." His eyes revealed a hint of mockery. "There are many people in the world, but I have never seen someone who is willing to sacrifice his life when he is living well." "So, you are also not willing?" Chu Yang asked sensitively. "I have ambitions and aspirations." Diwu Qingro was silent for a while and then said casually, "But I also have a family. And I am only a retainer." Chu Yang let out a long "oh" sound. "You also know my origin and you also know my identity." Diwu Qingro said, "So, I came here tonight to be open and honest." "Yes," Chu Yang admitted. "And I guess that you will not fight with me for a long time in this war." Diwu Qingro's eyes suddenly became very meaningful as he said this. "That is not necessarily true." Chu Yang's heart moved and he said with a smile, "Fast people have fast ways of fighting, slow people have slow ways of fighting. I don't care." Diwu Qingro chuckled and said, "Now there is an opportunity in front of you to end this war in a very short time. At this point, everyone can write their own guesses in the book review. I need to draw on everyone's wisdom, so please feel free to comment." Chapter 398. "You mean, tonight?" Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. "I can see the Emperor Star technique." Diwu Qingru smiled, "And this time the Emperor Star shines in the world and stands in Iron Cloud. So, no matter how long the war lasts, the winner will be Iron Cloud. Even if I have the ability, I can't change the destiny." Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and looked at Diwu Qingru in surprise. He didn't expect Diwu Qingru to be so frank. He said, "You can see the final outcome?" "Yes." Diwu Qingru smiled deeply, "That's why I came today." Chu Yang smiled. Yes, if Diwu Qingru was sure of victory, he wouldn't have come here today. "Tell me your conditions," Chu Yang said casually. "Now you know that although luck is illusory, it's very important to the clan. Not only does the Zhuge clan need luck," Diwu Qingru smiled meaningfully, "our Diwu clan also needs luck." "Luck?" Chu Yang pondered and said frankly, "But I don't understand what you're talking about." "You don't need to pretend to understand, I understand." Diwu Qingru smiled gently. At this time the fighting sounds outside had gradually decreased. It seemed that the enemy was retreating. But Chu Yang didn't think about this at all. Diwu Qingru didn't seem to care either. It seemed that he wasn't worried at all about being alone in the enemy camp with hundreds of thousands of troops. After a long time Chu Yang smiled faintly, "You're right, but I don't feel at ease if I do as you say. Because I don't trust you." He stared intently at Diwu Qingro. Then he smiled and said, "Unless you can give me a reason to be completely at ease. I'm here today to give you this reason." Diwu Qingru said calmly, "Luck is very important, and the Zhuge clan's luck is extracted from Great Zhao. But after this war, Great Zhao won't exist." He smiled meaningfully and said, "So, the Zhuge clan won't be able to extract luck this time?" Chu Yang nodded faintly, but his mind was spinning rapidly as he pondered. "So, when the Tribulation Sword Master ascends to the upper three heavens, the Zhuge clan will be in trouble." Diwu Qingru said slightly. "I don't understand." Chu Yang shook his head blankly and said, "Even if the Tribulation Sword Master appears and ascends to the upper three heavens, the Zhuge clan may not necessarily be unlucky. As long as these clans are modest and cautious and don't offend people easily, it wouldn't be difficult for them to become friends with the Tribulation Sword Master. Even if they don't interfere with each other's business, the Tribulation Sword Master won't easily destroy a large clan, right?" "Ha ha." Diwu Qingro couldn't help but laugh. "Minister Chu, if you can say these words, then it can be said that you are an upright person even though your wisdom is outstanding, and your conduct is strange and your methods are sinister." Chu Yang touched his nose awkwardly. He really didn't understand why he would say that. The birth of the Tribulation Sword Master is a reshuffle of the heavenly layers. Diwu Qingro said casually, but why is there a reshuffle? This is the truth of the heavenly Tao. Why do you want to shuffle the cards? Chu Yang asked. He had a vague feeling that something was amiss, but he wasn't sure about it. Therefore, he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to get to the bottom of it. Why do countries and dynasties need to be replaced? Diwu Qingro asked back. Then he answered himself, that's because the previous dynasty had already decayed. So, it had to be eliminated. The heavenly layers are the same. Chu Yang nodded, that's true. Any clan that has been in power for 10,000 years will breed many malignant tumors, and these malignant tumors are often fatal. Yes, that's the reason. Diwu Qingro nodded deeply. The Tribulation Sword Master will never provoke the Zhuge clan, but the Zhuge clan will definitely provoke the Tribulation Sword Master. No matter how many times the family had given out orders, the things that were supposed to happen would definitely happen. And once it happens, the Tribulation Sword Master won't be able to accept a peaceful solution. In the end, the conflict will only intensify and become more and more intense. When the Zhuge clan knows that the other party is the Tribulation Sword Master, things will have reached a point where even the heavenly Tao can't reverse it. Diwu Qingro smiled deeply and said, this is fate, this is fate. And the Tribulation Sword Master is the origin of fate. So, things will never stop happening around him. He doesn't have to cause trouble, but trouble will always find him. Diwu Qingro's gaze was profound. Even if he were to sleep at home, someone would certainly tear down his house and force him to seek revenge, to seek justice, and to demand an explanation. And this explanation is not something that can be achieved peacefully. It requires force. And force will lead to death. And death will lead to more and more problems. Diwu Qingro smiled mysteriously and said, do you know why? No, Chu Yang said honestly. In the heavenly layers continent, this is called tribulation, which corresponds to the word tribulation in the Tribulation Sword. Diwu Qingro chuckled. But in terms of techniques, this is called heart effect, and the Tribulation Sword Master is the heart. If the heavenly layers continent is a play, then the Tribulation Sword Master is the main character. Diwu Qingro's eyes were cold and a sharp light flashed. He said insidiously, and the main character will never have a smooth journey. I see. Chu Yang nodded deeply and said, so, all these can only be described with one word, heavenly Tao. Am I right? Diwu Qingro laughed, exactly. His sharp eyes swept around and saw Wu Qianqian. He revealed a mysterious smile and said, Minister Chu, let me give you an example. If you were the master of Tribulation Sword, you didn't do anything at home and you didn't offend anyone. But suddenly, a lecherous young master appeared. And this lecherous young master kidnapped this beautiful Miss Wu. Let me ask you, would you let him go? Without waiting for Chu Yang to speak, Diwu Qingro interrupted, even if this lecherous young master has a dominant clan behind him, and his father is the leader of the #1 clan, will you let him go? Chu Yang was stunned and then he said fiercely, fuck. How can I let him go so easily? Wu Qianqian's face turned red. Isn't that right? This is fate. Diwu Qingro said calmly, it's called fate for ordinary people. They can only accept their fate. But it's called tribulation for the Tribulation Sword Master. It's the tribulation of the big clan that the lecherous young master belongs to. Diwu Qingro had been talking about conditions and expanding the topic, but he didn't because Chu Yang changed the topic. But Diwu Qingro wasn't anxious or impatient at all. Instead, he tried his best to explain and dispel Chu Yang's doubts. This point was very bizarre. Diwu Qingro was patient and far-sighted, but he shouldn't be so patient with Chu Yang. I see. The heavens revolves around the Tribulation Sword. Chu Yang let out a long breath. Maybe there's a ruler above the heavens which is the heaven's will. But in this heavens, the Tribulation Sword is the ruler. Exactly. Diwu Qingro said solemnly. The two didn't speak for a long time. How do you want to cooperate this time? Chu Yang asked. This time he took the initiative to mention it, which could be considered as returning the favor. When I came to the lower 3 heavens, I secretly learned the fate transfer channel because I was extra careful. I set up a small one myself. Diwu Qingro smiled and said, although it's small, it used up all the materials that our Diwu clan had accumulated for 10,000 years. Oh. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. Of course, we didn't dare to compete with the Zhuge clan for Great Zhao's fate. At that time I thought that even if Iron Cloud lost, it still had the noble emperor's aura. At that time, this noble emperor's aura would dissipate between heaven and earth. And the Zhuge clan obviously didn't care about the remaining fate of these losers. So, it was better to let our Diwu clan take advantage of it. What's more, such a small formation has a very small impact on my lifespan. It's only 30 years, and I can afford these 30 years. Diwu Qingro said, so, if Iron Cloud wins, our Diwu clan's days will be much better. Of course, I have to escape the Zhuge clan's punishment for my failure first before I can talk about other things. I see. Chuyang took a deep breath. Chuyang sucked in a breath of cold air. I didn't expect that Diwu Qingro had secretly set up this chess piece without anyone knowing. This guy really wanted to leave behind a backup plan no matter the situation. But this way I'm also in danger. Diwu Qingro smiled bitterly, because I only planned to collect the remaining fate. So, I naturally set it up casually. But Iron Cloud is going to win. This is equivalent to Heavens will playing with me ruthlessly. When the Tribulation Sword Master dominates the heavens, if the Diwu clan really absorbs the fate of Iron Cloud, then Diwu Qingro will disappear from this world. And the origin of this is the small formation I set up back then. Isn't such an outcome a joke by nature? It's unexpected. Diwu Qingro looked up to the sky and sighed. Chuyang was also very surprised. He was just admiring Diwu Qingro's unpredictable methods. He didn't expect that things would turn out like this in the blink of an eye. But Diwu Qingro's life is worth it for the sake of my Diwu clan's longevity. Diwu Qingro insipidly said, but this time the arrangement is indeed somewhat grandiose, because the formation of this destiny, especially this kind of destiny that can only be generated by the rise and fall of a nation, needs to have soaring blood energy. Soaring blood energy? Chuyang was expressionless. He thought, no wonder Diwu Qingro started the war so quickly. But this time I attacked openly and retreated secretly. This is somewhat superficial. You will see the flaw and may not plan it. Diwu Qingro said lightly. This way there may not be a decisive battle. If we retreat then we won't have enough fate. Because Great Zhao will weaken day by day and Iron Cloud will be like the sun. It will slowly prosper. When it develops to the end, it will become a gradual encroachment. Then there won't be any battle spirit left. Chapter 399. Chu Yang's complexion remained calm. Your Iron Cloud's army will launch a surprise attack tomorrow morning. Then I will immediately return to the army to fight a decisive battle. And I will give you, King of Hell Chu, a glorious victory. Diwu Qingro said word by word, I will owe you a big favor today. What if I say no? Chuyang asked expressionlessly. Then I will immediately lead the army back to Great Zhao. Diwu Qingro won't be able to destroy Iron Cloud in my lifetime. But Iron Cloud won't be able to unify the world. That way I won't face any imminent disaster. At least Diwu Qingro, can live for 200 or 300 years with my martial power. But I don't know if Minister Chu can afford to wait for 200 or 300 years. Diwu Qingro raised his head and looked at Chuyang. He slowly said each word. Chuyang stood up. His face was gloomy as he slowly walked forward. He frowned. There was no doubt that Diwu Qingro's previous preparations were all for this one condition. Moreover, this condition had hit Chuyang's weakest point. 200 or 300 years. Could Chuyang afford to wait if this situation continued for 200 or 300 years? He couldn't afford to wait. He couldn't afford to wait no matter how he looked at it. However, these were the lives of 8 million soldiers. If Chuyang accepted Diwu Qingro's proposal, then the war would end and the world would be decided. And he would have completed his first big step in reversing the heavens. He would have been able to leave the lower 3 heavens and go to the place he had longed for a long time. His lover was still in the abyss of suffering there. She was waiting for him to save her. His good brothers were fighting a bloody battle for a common future. His master was waiting for him there. Chuyang wanted to go there. But Chuyang couldn't afford to pay the price of 8 million people. It was normal for people to die in an ordinary war. Chuyang wouldn't have felt any psychological burden if Diwu Qingro hadn't come here first. He would have killed millions of people with his own hands if the decisive battle happened today. Because this was war. It was an unstoppable war. Either you die or I die. But Diwu Qingro came. He told Chuyang his plan, the direction of the war and its outcome. It was equivalent to 2 people plotting for the same goal. This was equivalent to 2 people conspiring to kill 8 million people. Chuyang couldn't afford to pay such a price. Diwu Qingro seemed to have noticed Chu Yang's urgency. He calmly waited for Chu Yang's reply after he raised this condition. Why do you think that I won't be able to wait? Chu Yang muttered, even if Great Zhao has Diwu Qingro, you won't be able to last for 200 or 300 years. If you really retreat, then in 30 to 50 years, I have absolute confidence that I can destroy Great Zhao. But 30 to 50 years? Can you afford to wait? Diwu Qingro didn't deny it. Instead he asked. He didn't wait for Chu Yang to speak. Instead he smiled gently and said, ever since you came to Iron Cloud, all of your methods have been swift and decisive. Your methods are Reiho's methods but not the way to rule a country. Actually, you can use a gentler method for everything. That way there won't be any side effects. You don't know what methods you're not using. Diwu Qingro casually said, as for Great Zhao, you didn't need to go but you still went. He pondered and looked at Chu Yang. I always feel that all your actions contain a very strong sense of purpose. I don't know your purpose, but I know that your world isn't in lower three heavens. He looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang also looked at him quietly for a long time. Diwu Qingro said, you're looking forward to a bigger world. A world that belongs to you. So, don't talk about 30 to 50 years. You can't even wait for 3 to 5 years. Behind Chu Yang, Wu Qianqian's delicate body trembled. As the person who understood Chu Yang the most, she knew that Diwu Qingro's guess was no longer a guess. It was a fact. So, I launched the decisive battle ahead of time. You shouldn't oppose it. But, more people will die than expected. Diwu Qingro exposed a cruel smile. I'm curious why you made such a change. Chu Yang frowned. You said that the destiny of your clan is one of the reasons. But I don't believe that it's the only reason. Diwu Qingro remained silent for a long time. Then he finally said, I didn't expect the Diwu clan to rise again at that time. I came to lower three heavens so that my talent and knowledge wouldn't be buried. I also wanted to be a meritorious minister. Even if I'm a powerful minister, as long as I unify the world, I'll naturally be immortalized. What I seek is nothing more than a false reputation. Diwu Qingro said in disappointment, but I didn't expect that the weather would change just as I was about to succeed. And my life's work would go down the drain. In other words, even the heavens don't want me, Diwu Qingro, to be immortalized for eternity. His eyes emitted a dazzling radiance. He spoke slowly and softly in an elegant and frightening tone, since I can't be immortalized for eternity, I'll go down in infamy for 10,000 years. If I can't be immortalized for eternity, then I'll be infamy for eternity. So, I deliberately set up this killing trap. Diwu Qingro looked at Chu Yang and slowly said, do you agree or not? It's easy for you and for me, as for the 8 million soldiers. Diwu Qingro insipidly said, the lifespan of an ant isn't long. This decision is too crazy. I won't agree to it. Chu Yang said indifferently. His eyes exposed a trace of pain as he said, 8 million people will be buried by my hands. I can't bear to do this. Diwu Qingro looked at him for a long time before he said, King of Hell Chu, King of Hell rewards the good and punishes the evil. Chu Yang said with an expressionless face, I can kill 8 million people on my own if the war breaks out. And that's because they want to kill me. But I, Chu Yang, disdain to do such a thing. Then do you know that Great Zhao will withdraw its troops if I leave today? Then it will be a war of at least 30 to 50 years. Diwu Qingro said, the war will inevitably continue for 30 to 50 years. It won't produce any bloody luck. But the total number of people who will die in the war will be far greater than 8 million. You think that you are being charitable today. So you let go of the lives of 8 million people. But you will have to pay the price of at least 10 million casualties in the future. Aren't those living creatures? Diwu Qingro asked aggressively. Those are living creatures. But I will have a clear conscience. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, but I will have a guilty conscience if I conspire with my enemy to kill my own soldiers, even if it's just one of them. I want a clear conscience. I won't hesitate to wield my sword as long as I have a magnanimous heart. I won't hesitate to kill everyone in the heavenly layer as long as I think it's right. Chu Yang seemed to have untied the knot in his heart. He suddenly said with a clear voice, but I won't go against my heart and plot against my own people, even if it's just a strand of hair. This is King of Hell Chu's bottom line. Chu Yang said proudly. This mental barrier was suddenly removed. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the cultivation of his mental state had improved by another step. Clap, clap, clap. Diwu Qingro gently clapped his hands and praised, you are indeed King of Hell Chu. You are worthy of being called a maverick. Suddenly the ground started to shake at this moment. Chu Yang's complexion changed. His eyes turned sharp as he looked at Diwu Qingro. Diwu Qingro sighed and said, "You don't want this. But I still want to give you this glorious victory. Moreover, I still owe you a favor. This matter is indeed somewhat sullen." Chu Yang's complexion changed. The sound of the ground shaking was very far away. But it lasted for a long time. This was clearly the sound of a million-strong army moving out. "They have already started the pursuit?" Chu Yang asked somewhat blankly. "If I'm not mistaken, then Tai Butian and Tai Longcheng's 3 million-strong army have already entered the battlefield apart from your 300,000 soldiers." Diwu Qingro chuckled. "Minister Chu, there have been many topics since I arrived, but I have paused for every topic." Diwu Qingro sat calmly. He smiled and said, "You have spoken 170 sentences since I arrived. But it only took you half an hour. In order to deal with your 170 sentences, I spoke 421 sentences. And it took me 3 hours." Diwu Qingro said, 4 hours have passed. Moreover, it's daybreak. These 4 hours are enough for Tai Longcheng to react and launch the pursuit." Diwu Qingro chuckled. Chu Yang's complexion turned cold. He was about to rush out. "They have already set out. And they have already stepped into my trap. It's too late even if you rush out now. Minister Chu, your 300,000 soldiers will decide the outcome of this battle. So, it's better not to act blindly without thinking," Diwu Qingro said indifferently. Chu Yang was about to take a step forward when he stopped. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Diwu Qingro. His pupils shrank dangerously. "You schemed against me?" "I schemed against you. Shouldn't I?" Diwu Qingro chuckled. "Moreover, I wanted to give you a big gift." Chu Yang slowly sat down. He calmed down and said, "But how can you be sure that Tai Longcheng will attack?" "That's because Tai Longcheng is the supreme commander. But you have the right to make the decision." Diwu Qingro said, "Tai Longcheng is supporting Iron Cloud on his own. He has worked hard and made great contributions. Tai Butian won't have any objection to Tai Longcheng's decision. He is the person Tai Butian trusts the most. Moreover, he trusts him blindly. Therefore, there's no need to be afraid of this uncle and nephew pair." Diwu Qingro sighed. "This was my greatest assurance in defeating Iron Cloud. But it has now become a blessing for Iron Cloud. Haha, the will of the heavens is unpredictable. Tai Longcheng will eventually step into my plan. And Tai Butian will also step into my plan if he steps in. Only you can turn the tide. Therefore, the variable in this entire plan is you." Diwu Qingro casually said, "Therefore, I didn't come here tonight to discuss conditions with you. Instead, I came here to entangle you for 4 hours." He smiled and said, "With the status of Diwu Qingro, it is not difficult for me to entangle you for 4 hours. But the overall situation is already set in stone in these 4 hours. Even if you are the master of Calamity Sword, you won't be able to reverse the situation. Moreover, you aren't," Diwu Qingro said slowly. "I have been under a lot of pressure these past few days. I have already thought about the ending of the lower 3 heavens. It will be over in about 10 chapters. But I am still racking my brain for the entry point of the lower 3 heavens. On one hand, it is ending. On the other hand, it is beginning. But I have to fulfill my promise. I have to do my best to write every chapter. I have to do my best to make every important character leave a deep impression in everyone's mind. That will be my proudest thing. It will also be my greatest success. And I want to be proud of it. So I can't be careless. And Diwu Qingro is a wise man. He can't let him end things carelessly. Even if he has to change his position, he must do it beautifully. Diwu Qingro has been dreaming of these past few days. Very sad. I don't have anything to do today. I finished writing in advance. But I want to go out and relax. So I took the initiative to invite a classmate for a drink to relieve the pressure. I am shamelessly asking everyone for votes. Monthly votes, recommendation votes, and evaluation votes. Of course, there are also subscriptions. I hope that capable brothers and sisters can support me. Of course, this is only if you think that this book is worthy of your subscription support. Chapter 400. Chu Yang calmly asked, "But how can you be sure that Tai Longcheng will fall into your trap? Tai Longcheng is the #1 general of the continent. But he has been suppressed by me for more than 10 years. In these 10 years I wanted him to win and he won. I wanted him to lose and he lost." Diwu Qingro smiled and said, "Wouldn't you feel aggrieved if you were in my place? Wouldn't you want revenge?" "I would," Chuyang replied affirmatively. No one wouldn't feel aggrieved about this matter. For a famous general who could be called a genius commander, it was an even more deep-rooted humiliation. Therefore Tai Longqing has an inner demon. He wants to defeat me, Diwu Qingro, fair and square. But he also knows that it's as difficult as ascending to heaven to take revenge against me. Therefore he desires this heaven-sent opportunity more than anyone else. But he is more hesitant than anyone else. That's because he is afraid of a trap. And that's because he knows how powerful I am. And he needs someone to affirm his pursuit plan at this time. And Tai Longqing only needs this affirmation. Diwu Qingro continued, Tai Longqing can turn his hesitation into determination as long as he has this affirmation. Diwu Qingro smiled and raised 3 fingers, and I have 3 people by Tai Longqing's side who are willing to speak for me. Wu Qianqian and Chuyang sucked in a cold breath at the same time. The generals of Iron Cloud have followed Tai Longqing for many years, and they have been suppressed by me. Therefore they will swarm forward as long as someone affirms. This is their mentality. They thirst for revenge. They thirst for meritorious service. They thirst to change the current situation. They thirst to defeat Diwu Qingro. But your identity is special. Tai Longqing must ask for your opinion even if he is absolutely certain about his pursuit plan. Therefore Tai Longqing immediately sent you a message after he analyzed my intentions. And you are the only person on this battlefield who can stay out of it. In other words, you are the only onlooker. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees everything clearly. Therefore I firmly believe that you can see through my plan. Therefore, I came in right after Tai Longqing's messenger delivered the letter. Diwu Qingro smiled. This time I came in and delayed you for 4 hours. On the other side, Tai Longqing has been waiting for your news under the urging of everyone. So he must have thought that you've acquiesced. Sometimes he can't wait to chase after you. That's because he doesn't know when he will miss the opportunity. Therefore, it is inevitable for the army to set out. Diwu Qingro insipidly said, "This is my tailor-made revenge plan for Tai Longqing. It is also the best opportunity for Iron Cloud to dominate the world. He will definitely seize it and will not miss it. He would rather take the risk than miss it. That's why my plan succeeded so easily." Diwu Qingro leisurely stood up. "Minister Chu, you must guard against the Golden Horse Riders Department. Of course, I believe that you've already made preparations. Jing Minghan is nothing more than a clown in your hands." Then he put on his mask and floated out with his thin body as if he was weightless. "Minister Chu, I owe you a favor. I will return it to you if I am lucky enough to meet you in the upper 3 heavens tomorrow. Farewell. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. You and I will meet again." Diwu Qingro's last words drifted in the distant wind. "Chuyang, what should we do?" Wu Qianqian anxiously asked. Chuyang remained silent. He floated out and arrived next to the flagpole. Then he floated up. He saw that the distant mountain had already been set ablaze. He calmed down and slowly said, 8 million troops have been thrown into the battlefield. The only thing we can do now is to wait and see. He paused for a moment and said, "Order the army to advance 50 miles. Wait for my orders at any time. Get ready to respond to any situation." "Yes." Wu Kuangyun. "Yes." The selected elite troops, the troops of Butian Pavilion, and the experts of Beyond the Heavens sect are to form an army. They will be independent of the 300,000 troops. Wait for my orders at any time. "Yes." Wu Kuangyun had been waiting for a long time. The war had already broken out. This hot-blooded general couldn't wait any longer. He heard Chu Yang's order and immediately blew the bugle horn. The 300,000 troops rumbled as they set off. The collision between Butian Pavilion and Golden Horse Riders Department was about to begin. Suddenly, a series of loud explosions resounded on the distant mountain. Flames soared to the sky. Half of the sky was illuminated in red. Chu Yang's heart was heavy. After all, these were the lives of 8 million people. However, Chu Yang's heart gradually calmed down as his warhorse moved forward step by step. He became cold and calm without a single ripple. This is a calamity. And this calamity has already begun. So, I have to bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind. That's all. I have to accept it. And I have to overcome it. The 300,000 troops were like a sharp arrow as they shot towards the sky. Tai Longqing immediately summoned the generals for a discussion after he had sent the letter. However, the generals unanimously decided to attack. Their faces were flushed with anger. Their fighting spirit was overflowing. They had been oppressed by Diwu Qingro for so long. So, how could they let go of such a heaven-sent opportunity? Tai Butian was distraught at the moment. Her entire mind was troubled by another matter. So she didn't think much about it. She quickly replied, "Uncle Wang can make the decision. I will command the army to follow." Tai Butian's affirmation made Tai Longcheng heave a sigh of relief. His fighting spirit blazed even brighter. However, King of Helchu's news still hadn't arrived. Time passed little by little. The enemy had retreated. But there was still no news from King of Helchu. "Supreme Commander, we can't wait any longer. We will lose the opportunity soon," the generals demanded. "Perhaps Minister Chu has already made preparations. Otherwise he would have already spoken out to stop us," an advisor said. Tai Longqing raised his eyebrows in anger. He finally made up his mind. Then he waved his big hand, "Mobilize the entire army. Chase and defeat Diwu Qingro." Sky-shaking cheers resounded. A biting cold fighting spirit ignited in the night sky with a loud rumble. The urgent sound of the bugle horn resounded in every military camp. Then a team of vanguard cavalry rushed out of the camp like angry dragons. They then rushed into the darkness ahead. The thunder-like sound of horse hooves continued to rumble as they rushed into the darkness. Then more than 1,000,000 soldiers rushed out like a tide. The rumbling sound of horse hooves shook the earth. Tai Butian's troops followed behind Tai Longcheng's army and rushed towards Great Zhao's camp. Millions of people moved at the same time. This momentum was earth-shattering. Tai Longcheng's army broke into Great Zhao's camp without any hindrance. Then they looked around and found that most of the troops had disappeared without a trace except for a few wounded soldiers. Great Zhao's army had already occupied Iron Cloud Camp by the time Tai Longcheng had rushed in. Reporting to Supreme Commander. "The camp is empty," the cavalry commander who had rushed in first quickly came forward to report. In fact, it wasn't empty. Those wounded soldiers had been slaughtered under his orders. They had been chopped like vegetables. "No one? Did we arrive too late?" Tai Longcheng frowned. "Quickly inquire." Reporting to Supreme Commander, Great Zhao's army has retreated to the back of the mountain. Some troops haven't been able to cross the mountainous area in time. So they are hurrying on with their journey, the mounted scout reported. Just. Tai Longcheng made a prompt decision. Then the cavalry rushed up the mountain like a tide. Tai Longcheng's cavalry continued to chase after Great Zhao's camp. Tai Longcheng's reinforcements entered Great Zhao's camp. Tai Butian's vanguard troops also arrived outside the camp. At this time, suddenly the sound of horns resounded from the mountaintops in all directions. Then a large number of Great Zhao's cavalrymen rushed down from the mountaintops with a loud rumbling sound. They drew their bows and knocked their arrows halfway down and aimed at the sky. Shoot! Hundreds of thousands of arrows were shot at the same time. The whooshing sound was so loud that it hurt people's eardrums. The densely packed arrows flew into the sky. The sky looked as if it had been dyed with ink. Ambush? Tai Longcheng sneered. How could he not expect an ambush since he had come to chase after them? Great Zhao's army stabilized their footing after a brief moment of panic. Then they looked for cover on the mountain walls. Simultaneously, their formation changed into a defensive one. "Diwu Qingro, I've been prepared for this move of yours," Tai Longcheng laughed loudly. "Kill?" Countless Great Zhao's cavalry rushed down from the mountaintop with a loud roar. Tai Longcheng's complexion changed. His eyes shone with an incredulous light. Decisive battle? He had expected that Diwu Qingro might have set up an ambush. But he hadn't expected that Diwu Qingro would choose to launch a decisive battle at this time after abandoning all his military supplies. The Great Zhao's army was swarming in like a swarm. It was clear that the entire army was involved in this battle. The vanguard cavalry of the two countries collided with each other in the blink of an eye. Everyone pulled out their sabers at the same time. The entire dark sky was illuminated by the flashing saber lights. Then their faces turned ferocious as they roared. Then they spurred their horses and rushed into the enemy's ranks. The two groups of cavalry were advancing in a frenzy. It was unknown whether they were friends or foes. They fell off their horses and got trampled into meat paste. But no one cared. There was only one thought in everyone's heart. Kill the enemy. Rush out of the enemy's big formation and pierce through it. Then turn around and kill. Kill? Hundreds of thousands of people shouted at the same time. It seemed as if the blue sky had been scared out of its wits. A ray of light appeared on the horizon at this moment. The neighing of the war horses, the screams, the roars, and the sounds of collisions resounded. The vanguard cavalry of Iron Cloud had rushed into the belly of Great Zhao's cavalry. And Great Zhao's cavalry had also rushed into the middle of Iron Cloud's cavalry. There was no strategy to speak of at this moment. There was only killing, killing, killing. All the so-called martial arts techniques were completely useless in this kind of battle. Heads soared to the sky unceasingly. Severed limbs were flying in the sky unceasingly. War horses were falling down unceasingly. Dozens of people were losing their lives every minute and every second. Everyone had fallen into a frenzy. This was a crazy war. Chapter 401. Countless banners fluttered in the wind and whistled as they rushed into the battlefield. Millions of soldiers roared as they rushed into the battlefield. Great Zhao's military camp had turned into a battlefield. More than 1 million people were fighting with each other. They were wielding their swords and slashing at each other. Suddenly there was a flash of fire. Suddenly the entire military camp was filled with electric sparks. Then there was a loud rumbling sound, and an earth-shattering explosion suddenly erupted in the heart of Great Zhao's military camp. The violent explosion had blown a hole of several hundred feet in the heart of the camp. Everyone in the heart of the camp, regardless of whether they were friends or foes, regardless of their rank, was blown up into the sky and scattered into pieces of flesh. Then the entire military camp suddenly caught on fire. The fire was raging and quickly spread. It had spread over 500 miles in the blink of an eye. Moreover, it was still rapidly expanding to the surroundings. Bursts of yellow smoke and black fog soared into the sky, and rapidly spread over the entire battlefield in this windless and cloudless weather. This smoke was obviously added with something. Everyone who smelled the yellow smoke felt dizzy. Moreover, their minds seemed to have fallen into an inexplicable confusion. They screamed wildly and waved their swords madly. They didn't care if they were friends or foes and started to fight in a chaotic manner. The black smoke rose and spread. Everyone who smelled it felt powerless. It seemed that they couldn't even control their eyelids. Their weapons fell to the ground with a clang sound. They could only look at the enemy's snow-white swords with a terrified look on their faces as they slashed at their bodies. The green smoke rolled and rose. Everyone who smelled it felt excited. It seemed as if their bodies had suddenly become congested with blood. They used their inexhaustible strength and roared as they slashed at their enemies. The thick purple smoke blew out. Everyone who smelled it felt as if they were in a dreamland. Moreover, the blood vessels in their bodies surged. They suddenly lifted their tents and found themselves surrounded by beautiful women. They couldn't help but shout excitedly and pounce on them like perverts. Obscene laughter, strange cries, and screams of struggle. These sounds were unbearable to the eyes. These things turned out to be all kinds of drugs that the Golden Horse Riders Department had spent more than 10 years to collect. Some of them were smokes that could make people feel powerless. Some were poisons and some were aphrodisiacs. All in all, there were all kinds of poisonous smokes that could make people lose their bearings here. Furthermore, as it burned, it continued to emit and there was more and more poisonous smoke, and as it rose, it kept drifting towards the mountains. However, it was blocked by the bandits and drifted back, continuing to cover the sky above the battlefield. It was as if there was a huge magnet here that kept the poisonous smoke from drifting away. Towards the end of the war, there was no organization and discipline. Everyone was killing based on their instincts. Whether it was the generals or the soldiers, they had all fallen into a state of confusion. Inside Diwu Qingrou's tent, Jing Menghun was fully clothed. He was counting the time. Finally, he stood up and shouted, "It's time for us to move out." All members of the Golden Horse Riders Department were to assemble and attack. Target, King of Hell Chu. Yes. Everyone replied in unison. Jing Menghun was about to stride out when someone suddenly shouted angrily from outside, "How can this be? I want to see the Prime Minister. I want to see the Prime Minister." It was the general of the Heavenly Dragon, Yuhan. He had rushed inside while speaking. He bumped into Jing Menghun. "King-level expert Jing, where's the Prime Minister?" "The Prime Minister isn't here. If you have something to say, tell me," Jing Menghun replied coldly. "What's going on?" Yuhan angrily pointed at the chaotic battlefield at the foot of the mountain. His eyes were bloodshot. "What kind of a shameful way of fighting is this? General Yu, what are you talking about?" Jing Menghun looked at him with dissatisfaction. "I only want to ask, who gave the order to blow up the camp?" Yuhan asked with grief and indignation. "Was me. I, Jing Menghun, gave the order. The Golden Horse Riders Department carried it out." "What's wrong?" Jing Menghun snorted and asked. What's wrong? Yuhan roared in anger. Suddenly he grabbed Jing Menghun's lapel. He clenched his teeth and asked, Why? Why did you do this? This is the Prime Minister's order. You can ask Prime Minister Diwu if you have any doubts. Jing Menghun looked at Yuhan's hand and said in an ice-cold voice, Let go. Bastard. Yuhan was extremely indignant. He suddenly slapped Jing Menghun's face and said angrily, You could have detonated the explosives ahead of time. That way Iron Cloud would have borne the brunt of the explosion and the smoke. Why did you have to detonate the explosives after our people had rushed in? This is a crime. Yuhan screamed in grief and indignation, Iron Cloud is finished. But we're also finished. Do you know that? You son of a bitch, those are my brothers. My soldiers. My soldiers. Jing Menghun reached out his hand and stroked the place where he had been slapped. His eyes were like an eagle's. They contained suppressed anger and a faint murderous intention. General Yu, you don't have the right to speak in this matter. I Jing Menghun have a good grasp of the timing. It was also the Prime Minister's arrangement. Now you let go. I won't haggle over the fact that you slapped me. Yuhan angrily shouted, I slapped you? Bastard. Even if I cut you to pieces, it won't be enough to compensate for your heinous crimes. This is murder. This is a deliberate rebellion. I want to see the Prime Minister. I want to see Diwu Qingro. The murderous intention in Jing Menghun's eyes grew more and more intense. General Yu, there are some things that you can't say. Yuhan pulled out his sword with a clang sound. Then he crazily rushed towards Jing Menghun and slashed at him. He cursed, You executioner, you and Diwu Qingro are executioners. Suddenly Jing Menghun reached out and grabbed his neck. He lifted his tall and sturdy body up. He clenched his teeth and fiercely said, Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Your soldiers? Can't your soldiers be killed? Don't tell me you have a lot of face? Do you believe that I won't kill you as well? Yuhan struggled with all his might. You dare. Kill me if you have the guts. If you don't kill me, Jing Menghun, I will. Suddenly a kacha sound was heard. Yuhan's neck was bent to one side. Blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He looked at Jing Menghun in disbelief. Then the light in his eyes slowly disappeared. Only a pair of stiff eyes were left. They were full of anger and hatred. Unexpectedly, Jing Menghun had already broken his neck. Everyone in the tent suddenly cried out in alarm. Then they became dumbstruck. Jing Menghun has beaten a general to death? You're overestimating your capabilities. Jing Menghun coldly snorted. He casually tossed Yuhan's corpse far away and said, Follow me. We're going to kill King of Hell Chu. The news of Yuhan's death at the hands of the Iron Cloud's assassins soon spread throughout the Great Zhao's barracks. Yuhan's 100,000-strong army was the only unit that Diwu Qingro had left behind to bring up the rear. Moreover, Yuhan was a man of virtue and prestige. He loved his soldiers very much. So, he had always been supported by the soldiers. Now that Yuhan had died, the army had no leader. So, it had become even more chaotic. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers wept at the same time. Take revenge for the great commander. Kill all of those Iron Cloud bastards. Someone suddenly yelled out crazily with tears streaming down his face. Go. Kill those bastards. Dozens of people galloped out of the ranks on their horses. They then rushed towards the battlefield in a frenzy. Take revenge for the great commander. A rumbling sound was heard. Thousands of people rushed out in a frenzy. Rush up. Tears streamed down the deputy general's face as he clenched his teeth. Kill them ruthlessly. A rumbling sound was heard as the 100,000-strong army rushed up the hillside. Then they rushed down like a sudden waterfall. The 30,000-strong cavalry of the Golden Horse Riders Department also rushed in another direction as these people rushed down the hillside. The hilltop had been densely packed with people a moment ago. But it had become empty now. A cool breeze blew, and a burst of thick smoke drifted over and covered the hilltop. The thick smoke dispersed and a black-robed figure appeared on the hilltop. He looked down at the battlefield in full swing and heard the earth-shaking battle cries. Diwu Qingro crossed his hands behind his back. His eyes were calm and gentle as he looked down. It was as if the bloody tragedy below had nothing to do with him. His black robe was fluttering in the wind. Diwu Qingro's beard was also gently fluttering. His face was calm and cool. He looked like an immortal. He looked like this for a long time. Then he gently sighed. He took out an invisible mound from his bosom and placed it on his palm. He stared at it for a long time. Then he opened his palm and softly said, Go. The invisible mound flapped its wings and flew up with a flapping sound. It circled in the air and then disappeared without a trace, as if it had melted into the air. This was a message for Yin Tian, and the others who were guarding the Great Zhao Prefecture's capital. Diwu Qingro had only written a few sentences on the message that the invisible mound had carried. Wash the prefecture with blood. Exterminate the imperial clan. Then Diwu Qingro's seal appeared. Diwu Qingro faintly smiled as he looked at the disappearance of the invisible mound. He looked in Chu Yang's direction and softly said in his heart, "King of Hell Chu, I owe you. But don't forget that you also owe me. You and I will meet again in the upper three heavens. At that time, haha." Then he took a deep breath and looked at the battlefield. Then he turned his head and looked at the direction of the Great Zhao Prefecture. There was reluctance and unwillingness in his eyes. But he didn't say anything in the end. He just let out a long sigh. After a long time, Diwu Qingro spoke in a sad and low voice. It seemed as if he was talking in a dream. "The lower three heavens is over? I'm afraid that I, Diwu Qingro, will never return to this place in this lifetime." The sky was getting brighter and brighter. The morning wind was also gradually blowing. It was getting stronger and stronger. The poisonous smoke that had originally shrouded the battlefield seemed to have completed its mission. It began to slowly drift away. The poisonous smoke was disappearing faster and faster along with the sound of the wind. A gust of wind came and the smoke rushed to the summit. It shrouded Diwu Qingro's thin figure. The thick smoke dispersed, and Diwu Qingro's figure disappeared without a trace. Chapter 402. The situation of the battle became even more chaotic. Yuhan's army rushed in and a part of them got drugged by the poisonous smoke. These people were already extremely sad and indignant. So, they became even more berserk. It seemed as if millions of people had lost their minds and were fiercely rushing in to kill. Tai Butian had also rushed in with Shadow and the army in the beginning. But, she had felt that something was wrong when she had discovered that the poisonous smoke was rising everywhere. So, the two shadows had risked their lives to rescue Tai Butian. Thick smoke floated in the air. People had lost their minds and had rushed into the battlefield. However, Tai Butian and the two shadows were safe and sound. Tai Butian's chest would flash with a hazy radiance every time the thick smoke floated over. And her body would be shrouded in this radiance. Shadow was also doing the same. The three of them were flabbergasted. But they later discovered that the mysterious Yang Jade had taken effect. This piece of mysterious Yang Jade had such a function. Everything was fine after they had withdrawn from the battlefield. However, the bloody smell that had soared to the sky still made Tai Butian uncomfortable. Her complexion had turned pale and she felt nauseous in her chest. She retched several times. Then she walked a little further away. Then she finally calmed down. Shadow looked at Tai Butian with a strange and worried look in his eyes. Only several tens of thousands of people had followed Tai Butian to protect her. The battlefield wasn't far away. So, it wouldn't take long for them to rush over here. However, Tai Butian was the most important person in the battlefield. Even millions of soldiers of Great Zhao's army didn't look in her direction. Tai Butian calmed herself down. Then she focused her eyes on the battlefield. She looked at the surrounding terrain and suddenly realized something. A look of deep worry and unbearable worry appeared on her face. Diwu Qingro had set up the 7 Killings Great Array with his own camp in this mountain as the dragon's spine. This Diwu Qingro is very vicious. 7 Killings Great Array? Shadow was puzzled. The 7 Slaughters Array, as its name suggests, is the most ferocious killing array. It needs the power of living beings to activate it. The more people die in this array, the greater the power of the array. Moreover, Diwu Qingro had arranged so many drugs inside. So, it made it even more difficult for people to retreat. In the end, the entire army was wiped out. Tai Butian's complexion changed as he said this. Shadow, you enter the array immediately. Tell Uncle Wang to withdraw immediately. As for the rest of the soldiers, withdraw as many as you can. The formation has already been completed. If we continue to stay here, we will only lose our lives. Ing nodded and leaped up, turning into a stream of light and rushing into the army formation. Tai Butian watched worriedly. Suddenly he let out a huge sigh. The lives of 8 million people. Diwu Qingru, what exactly are you trying to do? Why did you make such a crazy decision? Right now, Tai Butian naturally didn't know that Diwu Qingru had already left this place. That green robe that had once awed the entire lower 3 heavens had already drifted to a faraway place. After a long time, Ing rushed out with a person on his back. His entire body was bathed in blood. He was Tai Longqing, a famous general of his generation. However, he had already fainted. What's wrong? Tai Budian was shocked. I was the one who knocked him out. Ing laughed dryly. He was also charmed. That's good. Tai Budian let out a sigh of relief. Then he looked in another direction. Why haven't we seen Minister Chu's troops yet? Minister Chu is extremely intelligent. He has foresight. I'm afraid that he has anticipated the situation here. That's why he hasn't moved. However, I'm afraid that our Iron Cloud's most elite military strength is only left with Minister Chu's 300,000 troops. Ing sighed. Tai Buqian's eyes flashed with a trace of comfort and pride. Then he insipidly said, Minister Chu always makes people feel at ease. Ing and Ing looked at each other. They both saw a trace of different emotions in each other's eyes. Suddenly the sound of hoofbeats was heard. A group of cavalry rushed over like a whirlwind. The leader shouted, We are Minister Chu. May I ask if His Majesty is well? His Majesty is well. What's the situation on Minister Chu's side? Ing replied loudly. Minister Chu is in a confrontation with the Golden Horse Riders Department. Minister Chu said that he will try his best to deal with the Golden Horse Riders Department. As long as His Majesty is well, this war is already won. That person replied loudly. Minister Chu, take care of yourself. Tai Budian replied loudly. Yes. This subordinate will remember. The person who had arrived suddenly pulled the reins of his horse. The horse neighed and suddenly changed direction. It turned around and rushed back the way it had come. Minister Chu is indeed a conscientious person, Ing said meaningfully. Tai Buqian's eyes revealed a trace of sweetness. But he understood in his heart, Chu Yang must have known about the situation here. That's why he's concerned about my safety. It's just as he said, everyone is inside the 7 Killings Great Array. Even if there are survivors, there won't be many of them. As for Iron Cloud, it's a victory as long as I'm still alive. That's because I still have Chu Yang's 300,000 troops. And Diwu Qingro has already thrown all his troops into the battle. Meanwhile, Chu Yang's Iron Bucket Formation was in a confrontation with the Golden Horse Riders Department's cavalry. Chu Yang wouldn't rashly start a decisive battle before Tai Buqian's news came back. This made Jing Menghun very sullen. King of Hell Chu. Jing Menghun roared, Come and fight me to the death. Chu Yang ignored him. Eventually the messenger rushed back. He brought back the news that Chu Yang had been longing for. His Majesty is well. Chu Yang felt relieved. Tai Budian is well. So the only thing left is to deal with the Golden Horse Riders Department. I believe that there won't be any other forces as long as I get rid of the Golden Horse Riders Department. Are you ready? Chu Yang asked. I'm ready. Wu Kuangyun's face flushed with excitement. I can finally move unhindered on the battlefield. He had been holding back for a long time because he couldn't personally go into battle. I'm not asking you. Chu Yang looked at Qin Yu Tong and the others. I'm ready. Qing'ong said loudly. What about me? Wu Kuangyun stared blankly and asked anxiously. You take the army and go to help His Majesty. You're needed there. As for the Golden Horse Riders Department, leave it to me. Chu Yang's eyes flashed with a trace of complex emotions when he said the words His Majesty. Chu Yang naturally had a plan to deal with the Golden Horse Riders Department. But he knew some things that he hadn't known before because of his plan. Chu Yang's plan was, poison? Give them a taste of their own medicine. He had specially studied the nearby terrain for this purpose. And he had finally set his target at a small lake 350 kilometers away. Chu Yang's plan was to turn the entire lake into poisonous water. Then he would lure the Golden Horse Riders Department there. This would cause Jing Menghun to lose a lot of his military strength. Then he would use this method one after another. And he would be able to wear down Jing Menghun no matter what he did. Chu Yang didn't even think about a frontal battle. Chu Yang and the troops he led were just bait. Tai Longqing was full of resentment towards Diwu Qingro. Therefore he would do anything to defeat Diwu Qingro. Jing Menghun was also full of resentment towards King Ran of Chu. In fact, it was an irreconcilable hatred. Jing Menghun would kill Chu Yang as long as he had the opportunity. Therefore, Diwu Qingro had specifically assigned Jing Menghun to Chu Yang. He had given Jing Menghun a mission: kill King of Hell Chu. You don't have to worry about anything else. You just have to lead the Golden Horse Riders Department and kill King of Hell Chu. Jing Menghun had received such an order. However, it was also in line with Chu Yang's thoughts. Chu Yang had naturally thought of using the poisonous flood dragon's poison when he had chosen the poison to use. However, the sword spirit had firmly stopped him. That was because the poisonous flood dragon's poison would have been poisonous for countless years if he had used it. Who knew how many people would have died if that had happened? Moreover, many of Jing Menghun's subordinates had already lost their lives to the poisonous flood dragon's poison. Therefore, the sword spirit had recommended another poison to Chu Yang. You can use the lust flood dragon's poison. It's much better than the poisonous flood dragon's poison. Lust flood dragon? Chu Yang asked blankly, what's a lust flood dragon? This sentence made the sword spirit widen his eyes. It can't be, right? You've been poisoned by the lust flood dragon's aphrodisiac. But you're still saying that you don't know? How did you get rid of it? I've been poisoned by the aphrodisiac? Chu Yang was even more at a loss. Do you remember that you had encountered 2 big snakes when you had met Jing Menghun in the last stage of your escape? One of them had fiercely blown a puff of pink smoke at you? The sword spirit was helpless. How can this guy not know anything? Chu Yang suddenly remembered when the sword spirit said this. Yes, there was such a thing. That was the lust flood dragon. The sword spirit said. He then explained the characteristics of the lust flood dragon. The more he explained, the bigger Chu Yang's mouth opened. In the end, he was dumbstruck like a wooden chicken. You're thinking that I've been poisoned? Chu Yang asked in a daze. Yes. The sword spirit affirmed. You mean that there's no other way to get rid of this aphrodisiac apart from sexual intercourse? The 5 of them would have taken advantage of this opportunity to fester and die? Chu Yang asked while stammering. Exactly. The sword spirit affirmed again. But why didn't I die? Chu Yang's eyes were lifeless. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. How do I know? I was also unconscious at that time, the sword spirit replied in a discontented manner. Is there really no other way? Chu Yang wanted to cry. Doesn't that mean that my pure and spotless body? I don't have any chastity? Cough, cough, cough. But the problem is, who opened the bud for me? I couldn't do anything even if I was awake. I could have suppressed the aphrodisiac at most and prolonged it for a while. But it would have eventually been resolved through this channel. The sword spirit helplessly said. Chu Yang sat down. His face was pale. The sword spirit reminded him, so, there must have been a woman who had sex with you. Chu Yang covered his face. But, who was that? He remembered that Tai Butian was a man and there were 2 shadows. Could it be shadows? Chu Yang shuddered as he recalled the rigid face of the female shadow. But then he concluded that it wasn't the case. If that's the case, there must have been some traces. Moreover, her husband was beside her. That's even more impossible. But, who was this woman who did that to me? Chapter 403. Minister Chu was in extreme pain. I lost my virginity unknowingly, and didn't feel anything? Moreover, I don't know who that woman is. I don't even know what she looks like. Is there anything more speechless for a man in the world than this? Is there anything more depressing than this? No matter who it is, Tai Butian definitely knows about it, said the sword spirit. Sigh. Chu Yang heaved a deep sigh. Suddenly, a feeling of suffocation rose in his heart. Tai Butian, you know everything but you don't say anything? What's going on? Are you playing with me? After suffocation came anger. But there was also undeniable gratitude. It doesn't matter who that woman is. I'm under the influence of the aphrodisiac. But I don't know anything. And I let the other party take the initiative. This is extremely difficult for any woman. Moreover, I have to bear a lot of pain. Because, according to Sword Spirit, my purity is very high. So, an ordinary woman can't bear it. The other party is my savior. But I don't even know who my savior is. Chu Yang remained silent. He really wanted to go to Tai Butian and ask her what was going on. But this was a critical moment. He could only wait until after the war. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. He eventually adopted Sword Spirit's method. Create a pool of spring water with the inner core of the lust dragon. First, this poison was more tyrannical than the poison of the poisonous flood dragon. Moreover, it was colorless and tasteless. Moreover, it was convenient. One only needed to throw the inner core into it. The most important thing was, the pool of green water would return to its original state after 3 days of evaporation. The efficacy of the poison would disappear completely. So, there was no need to worry. Therefore, Chu Yang had taken out the 2 inner cores a few hours ago, and hid them in the pool of water. Chu Yang saw that Jing Menghun was still strutting around after he received the news that Tai Butian was safe and sound. He couldn't help but get angry. Motherfucker, I'm depressed. But you bastard still came here to make a fuss. Wu Qianqian. You follow Wu Kuangyun. Leave this to me. Chu Yang's face was cold. Chu Yang, leave this to me, Wu Qianqian said calmly. Chu Yang turned his head to look, and saw that Wu Qianqian's attire was the same as his. A black robe completely covered her body. She only needed to wear a mask and she would be a living king of Hell Chu. What are you doing? Chu Yang's face turned cold. I will be the bait for you. Wu Qianqian's eyes were filled with determination. Everyone knew that this battle against the Golden Horse Riders Department was a battle with a huge disparity in terms of ratio. The 30,000-strong army of the Golden Horse Riders Department couldn't be compared to this motley crew that Chu Yang had temporarily assembled. The danger of this battle far exceeded the slaughter of millions of soldiers. Moreover, Jing Menghun, a Peking-level expert, was personally leading the team. There were also dozens of lower-grade revered martial artists. The weakest one was a martial master. Even an emperor-level expert could lose his life if he wasn't careful. Wu Qianqian was very pessimistic. However, there was one thing that she had to do. Even if I have to die a horrible death, nothing must happen to Chu Yang. Therefore, Wu Qianqian had already prepared herself. I will replace Chu Yang and fight with Jing Menghun's people. I will take them to the pond when they are unable to endure the repeated battles. It would be good if they could come back alive. But Chu Yang would still be alive if they died in this battle. Even if they continue to deal with the Golden Horse Riders Department, they would be weakened by at least half of their strength. It would be much easier for Chu Yang to deal with them. Wu Kuangyun had already begun to lead his troops when she saw that the three armies were ready. Wu Qianqian clamped her legs together and was about to rush out. Her hand reached into her bosom and was about to take out the mask to wear. Even if I die, my love won't be in vain if I die like this. No. Chu Yang grabbed her and looked into her eyes with a stern look. I beg you. Wu Qianqian whispered. But her voice was firm as she said, I beg you. You don't have to go. I will go. I beg you. Chu Yang's mind was shaken. He suddenly became absent-minded and thought of Mo Qingwu. Back then Qingwu was the same. No matter what, she would rather be injured and die than let him get hurt. Everything she did was for him. Chu Yang groaned in pain. He suddenly opened his eyes. Qianqian? I beg you. Don't do this. He closed his eyes and restrained his surging emotions. Then he said in a low voice, I already owe a woman my whole life. I don't want to owe another woman my whole life. Then he suddenly pointed his finger at Wu Qianqian's chest. Wu Qianqian was caught off guard. She didn't have enough time to defend herself. Her body swayed and she fell into Chu Yang's arms. But her beautiful eyes were wide open. Her face was full of anxiety. Her eyes were full of pleading, let me go. Let me go. Wu Kuangyun. Chu Yang shouted. Your subordinate is here. Miss Wu is injured. Take her to His Majesty's place to recuperate. Chu Yang ordered. Yes. Wu Kuangyun immediately arranged a carriage. Chu Yang held Wu Qianqian and gently placed her inside. Wu Qianqian looked at him foolishly. Chu Yang hardened his heart and turned around to leave. Wu Qianqian's tears finally flowed down silently. She looked at Chu Yang's back as he strode away. Her heart was filled with endless sorrow. Chu Yang, you already owe a woman your whole life. So you have to repay her in this life. So you don't want to owe me your whole life. But you know what? You know what? You've already owed me. You've already owed me your whole life. Even though I won't ask you for it, but you really owe me. Wu Qianqian silently shed tears. The carriage swayed and slowly started to move. Chu Yang restrained the Golden Horse Riders Department so that Tai Butian could quickly take care of the battlefield and secure the victory. Who was more important and who was less important? Minister Chu turned around and looked up to the sky. He shouted, everyone get ready. 30,000 elites roared like a tsunami. Ah! The Golden Horse Riders Department is on the other side. They are known as the most elite troops in the world. Are you afraid to face them? We're not afraid. Do you want to defeat the Golden Horse Riders Department? Chu Yang roared, what's the most powerful in the world? They're just bullshit in our eyes. The Golden Horse Riders Department is bullshit. They're worse than bullshit. 30,000 people raised their arms and shouted. Chu Yang laughed out loud. He spurred his horse forward and shouted, Jing Minghun, I'll give you a chance to fight a decisive battle. You and I have the same number of people. Do you dare to fight to the last man? Jing Minghun's eyes emitted a deep hatred. I swear I'll tear you to pieces as long as you don't run away. Ha ha ha. Chuyang laughed strangely. He suddenly clamped his legs on the horse's belly and shouted, chop these bastards into mincemeat. The sturdy horse issued a long neigh and fiercely rushed out. 30,000 people whistled behind him and rolled out like a gale. Jing Minghun exposed a cruel and evil grin on his face. He waved his hand, kill. If you kill King of Hell Chu, you'll be promoted by 3 ranks, and you'll get 10,000 taels of gold. The Golden Horse Riders Department's iron-like army surged forward. They started slowly and then sped up. They slowly formed a cruel torrent on the ground, and fiercely met Chu Yang's troops. Chuyang let out a long and loud shout. He jumped up along with his horse. Then he shouted, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? He had used this move at this moment. The entire area was covered in blood. But he had gained a kind of enlightenment. It had become even more cruel and fierce. A bright sword light soared high into the sky. It turned into an unstoppable fierce light. It rushed into the troops of the Golden Horse Riders Department at lightning speed, and went straight for Jing Minghun. Suddenly, a magnificent crown appeared in midair. This crown was golden red in color. It looked like the sun had risen in the sky. It was several times bigger than the crown of an ordinary king-level expert. Jing Minghun exclaimed, a king-level expert? King of Hell Chu has broken through to the king-level expert in such a short time. However, he didn't have time to wonder because Chu Yang's sword had already swept away the rain of blood. More than a dozen people screamed as they were cut into 2 halves. Chu Yang had arrived in front of Jing Minghun. Come on. Jing Minghun flew up from his horse's back. His sword energy shot out in a crisscross manner. He met Chu Yang's move head-on. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? Both of their bodies trembled with a loud bang. Jing Minghun borrowed the force of the collision to fly back. He was extremely distressed. The sword that I've been using for decades has turned into a sawtooth. He then looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang didn't care about his sword. He let out a long and loud shout and rushed forward again. Jing Minghun felt a chill in his heart. He had felt that King of Hell Chu had made great progress every time he had fought with him. This time he was actually able to stand on equal footing with him and not be at a disadvantage. Chu Yang had borrowed the power of the divine sword. Moreover, his sword moves were very mysterious. But it was still inconceivable that he could achieve this. Jing Minghun saw that Chu Yang's opponent was rushing over with an aggressive momentum. So he fiercely dodged and avoided Chu Yang's sharp sword. Then he grabbed a big saber from one of his subordinates, and prepared to fight with Chu Yang again. However, he turned his head and saw that King of Hell Chu was ignoring him. Chu Yang had killed his way into the cavalry. Blood surged everywhere he went. And human heads rolled like watermelons. Chu Yang had rushed forward more than 200 feet in a flash. He had left behind nearly 100 mutilated corpses. Jing Minghun roared and rushed over. Then the 2 armies collided with each other. It seemed as if the heavenly thunder had ignited the earth's fire. Both sides were doing their utmost to kill each other. They were doing their utmost to advance. 2 people would often exchange a move. Then they would pass by each other and would be replaced by another opponent. Everyone was rushing forward with indomitable will. Chu Yang felt a bright light in front of him after a quarter of an hour. The pressure on his body had lightened. He had already broken through the rear of the enemy's cavalry. Only 18,000 of the 30,000 elites were left behind. And they followed Chu Yang as he rushed out. Jing Minghun let out a long and loud shout. He gathered his troops and turned around at the fastest speed. He was ready to welcome the next round of battle. King-level expert Jing's confidence had greatly increased after this round of battle. The enemy has left behind at least 10,000 corpses in this battle. But my side has only paid the price of less than 5,000 people. We will soon be able to kill the enemy as long as we continue to fight like this. However, he was left dumbfounded when he turned around. King of Hell Chu had led his troops. He hadn't turned around. He had rushed in the opposite direction like a wisp of smoke. And he had left behind billowing smoke on the ground. Chapter 404. Everyone run. These bastards are too ferocious. A voice was heard from afar. It was King of Hell Chu. Jing Minghun was so angry that he almost vomited blood. King of Hell Chu, you're shameless. Didn't you say that we should fight to the death? King of Hell Chu's scolding voice was heard from afar. Jing Minghun, you're a moron. What qualifications do you have to fight to the death with me? Don't you think that exhausting you to death is the same as fighting to the death? Don't you think that playing you to death is the same as fighting to the death? Haha. Jing Minghun's eyes turned red as he roared, chase? He didn't believe that King of Hell Chu's motley crew could outrun his golden horse armored cavalry. Diwu Qingrou's firm command had made Jing Minghun's heart very determined to kill King of Hell Chu. How could he not chase after him when he had such a big advantage? Suddenly the two teams started to chase after each other. They left billowing dust on the ground. On the other side, Wu Kuangyun and his army quickly joined Tai Butian. They looked at the earth-shaking battle inside the Seven Killings Great Formation, and sucked in a cold breath. Your Majesty, why don't you give the order to attack? Wu Kuangyun asked cautiously. Anyone would know that this was the best time to attack. The people inside had clearly exhausted their strength. As long as there were fresh troops inside, it would be easy to capture them. Moreover, there were so many ironclad soldiers. No. Tai Butian slightly shook her head. Her eyes were filled with pity. It's not that I don't want to. Diwu Qingru has used the power of heaven to combine the terrain with the mountain range to form a killing formation. Millions of soldiers have been sacrificed to activate the Seven Killings Great Formation. Moreover, this formation connects heaven and earth. It can't be broken. She sighed deeply. Even if millions of people were to enter, they would be affected by the killing formation, and would turn into corpses. Wu Kuangyun sucked in a cold breath. His eyes opened wide. Diwu Qingrou's deranged behavior is intolerable, Tai Butian said angrily. Everyone was silent. Diwu Qingrou had set up such a formation. It was clear that he wanted to capture all the soldiers of Iron Cloud and Great Zhao in one fell swoop. If he had only schemed against Iron Cloud, it would have been understandable. After all, they were enemies. But to even scheme against one's own people was truly too inhumane. It's a pity that Diwu Qingrou's loyal subordinates have been risking their lives for decades. Wu Kuangyun heaved a long sigh. Those people had risked their lives for Diwu Qingrou. They had guarded the borders for decades without any complaints or regrets. But Diwu Qingrou had mercilessly abandoned them. They couldn't help but feel a little sad. Tai Butian also sighed. Then he changed the topic and said, however, there's only one person like Diwu Qingrou in these thousands of years. Wu Kuangyun's heart trembled. He bowed and said, yes. Fortunately, we are working under His Majesty, which is 1,000,000 times better than our colleagues in Great Zhao. Then he looked at the great array and said, Your Majesty, it seems that this battle will only end in the afternoon. Your Majesty, why don't you take a rest first? Leave the matters here to me. Tai Butian smiled faintly. She glanced sideways and saw Wu Qianshan standing at the side. Her eyes lit up involuntarily. Since that's the case, I'll go and have a chat with Miss Wu. Her tone deliberately revealed traces of tenderness. Wu Kuangyun was startled. Then he exposed an ambiguous smile and said, Your Majesty, please. Tai Butian nodded and walked towards Wu Qianshan. Then the two of them exchanged a few words. Then they left under the protection of the Imperial Guards. Tai Butian dismissed everyone in the big tent. Only Wu Qianshan and herself remained. The two of them sat opposite each other. Wu Qianshan had been worried about Chu Yang's safety, so she was somewhat distracted. However, Tai Butian's mind was in a mess. She didn't know what to say, so she remained silent for a while. Wu Qianshan recovered after a long time. Then she asked faintly, Your Majesty, what's the matter? Tai Butian smiled embarrassedly and said, Yes, there's something I want to discuss with Miss Wu. Haha, I also want to say something from the bottom of my heart. This war was really cruel. I hope that such a cruel war will never happen again. The people are in a terrible situation. The common people are in a terrible situation. It's really too horrible to look at. Wu Qianshan said faintly, With Your Majesty's wisdom and martial prowess, the common people's lives will definitely get better and better. Haha. Tai Butian smiled gently. Suddenly, she changed the topic and said, Miss Wu, what do you think of Minister Chu? When Wu Qianshan heard the words Minister Chu, her eyes narrowed. Her scattered spirit gradually gathered together. She rolled her eyes and asked coldly, What do you think? She thought to herself, Could it be that His Majesty wants to give up after seeing that the situation is in his hands? When she thought of this, she couldn't help but feel a strong sense of vigilance. I'm not talking about that. Tai Butian coughed speechlessly and said, I'm saying that Minister Chu seems to have a beloved woman in his heart. And The light in Wu Chanchan's eyes dimmed. She said, "That has nothing to do with me." Of course. Tai Budian had always been eloquent. But now she felt that every sentence she said was a little stuttering. She didn't even know how to open her mouth. "But Miss Wu, do you intend to continue like this?" Tai Butian's eyes flickered. She said, "You must know that men and women should get married when they grow up." "Your Majesty, what exactly are you trying to say?" Wu Chanchan's thoughts were stirred up by her words. She couldn't help but feel a little bad. She was about to turn 20. If she still didn't get married, she would be considered an old lady. Although she was determined, her father would definitely urge her to talk about marriage. It was so annoying. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but be at her wit's end. "I'm saying?" Tai Budian coughed a few times. She found it difficult to speak. After thinking for a while, she finally let out a long sigh. "I, Tai Budian, have been too old since I was young. For more than 10 years I've been under tremendous pressure. Even when I take a breath I have to be careful. I've also never tasted the love of ordinary men and women." Alarm bells rang in Wu Chanchan's heart. What does this mean? To show his own purity? Tell me he hasn't been flirting with women? There are only a few maids in the palace. Even when he ascended the throne, he didn't have a concubine. Tai Budian said with difficulty. As the Emperor of Iron Cloud, he doesn't have a single woman by his side. Wu Chanchan snorted. Her face was a little pale. If it weren't for the fact that the other party was the Emperor, she would have left in a huff. But the unification of the world is imminent. The legacy of the Emperor has to be put on the agenda. There are 3 ways an ordinary family can be unfilial. Having no descendants is the worst, let alone the legacy of the Emperor's grandson. Tai Budian beat around the bush, feeling helpless. She raised her head and saw that Wu Chanchan was still cold and expressionless. Tai Budian sighed again in her heart. So she continued to work hard. Now the court officials are busy with the selection every day. It's really annoying. Wu Chanchan snorted again. Suddenly she was about to stand up. "Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." Don't. Tai Budian hurriedly stood up to stop her. "To be honest, this time I'd like to ask Miss Wu for a favor. It's just a small favor." "What favor?" Wu Chanchan asked. "Miss Wu." Tai Butian's expression became serious and serious. "If I, Tai Budian, am removed from the position of the Emperor and let Miss Wu look at me as an ordinary person, do you have any redeeming qualities?" "Your Majesty is an extraordinary man." "Of course, I have my redeeming qualities," Wu Chanchan said calmly. "Then what kind of person am I in your heart?" Tai Budian persisted in her questioning. "I want to hear Miss Wu's honest thoughts." "Your Majesty is handsome and elegant. Every word and action of yours is elegant. When you're gentle, you make people feel like they're bathing in the spring breeze. When you're strict, you make people feel like they're in a thunderstorm. When you're quiet, you're moving like a fleeing rabbit. You're one of the top men in the world today." Wu Chanchan said sincerely. But what?" Tai Budian asked anxiously. "But it's just that your height is a little short." Wu Chanchan didn't stand on ceremony and went straight to the point. The way she looked at Tai Budian was clearly saying, "You're about the same height as me." Tai Budian was a little speechless. Actually, Tai Butian's height wasn't considered short. With a height of 1.7 meters, he could be said to be a crane in a flock of chickens. But Wu Chanchan herself was a tall beauty. The two of them were about the same height, and there was Chu Yang as a comparison. Therefore, in Wu Chanchan's eyes, this man Tai Budian was just a third-level handicap. "Actually, I'm not considered short. Minister Chu is only a palm taller than me." Tai Budian defended himself somewhat weakly. Wu Chanchan rolled her eyes. "Only a palm taller than you? You make it sound so easy. It's not like you don't know. Not to mention a palm. Even if you're taller by a bean, you're still a height that a person can't reach in his lifetime. If that's the case, the difference between a mountain and the sky isn't that big. At most, it's only a few 100,000 miles apart. What matter does your Majesty have that you need my help with?" Wu Chanchan asked somewhat impatiently. "You left me here alone with a man and a woman. What if Chu Yang comes back and sees us and misunderstands?" Actually I, Tai Budian stammered. Suddenly, he made up his mind and said, "Actually, I've always admired Miss Wu." "Stop." Wu Chanchan was furious. She thought to herself, you actually said it out loud. But since Tai Budian had said it out loud, why would he stop? He simply continued without a care. "Now the courtiers are urging me to get married. If Miss Wu doesn't mind, I'm willing to make Miss Wu the Empress. For the rest of my life there will be no second color. What nonsense are you talking about? Wu Qianshan's face was frosty. She stood up abruptly and turned to walk out. Wait! Tai Budian shouted. But why would Wu Qianshan bother with him? The moment she heard that, she walked even faster and was about to walk out. Tai Budian chased after her and hugged her. He said, "Don't be in such a hurry to leave." Wu Qianshan was furious. "Let go of me." She reached out and pushed him away. This pair of hands actually happened to push against Tai Butian's chest. Chapter 405. Qianshan was suddenly taken aback. This doesn't feel right. She looked suspiciously at Tai Butian's flat chest and couldn't help but grab and rub it again. Ah! Wu Qianshan screamed, almost sending the tent flying. The person being molested hadn't even screamed, but this person who was molesting someone else actually screamed first. Tai Budian only felt a pinch on her chest and couldn't help but blush. It was summer now and she wasn't wearing much clothes. "You're still touching," Tai Budian said angrily with a red face. She felt that the hands on her chest actually didn't stop grabbing and pinching. Ah! Wu Qianshan screamed again. She jumped back 3 steps. She could feel cold sweat trickling down her back. Her face was deathly pale as she stammered, You, what about me? Tai Budian rolled her eyes at her. "Don't make any noise. You're like, a girl?" Wu Qianshan finally woke up. She lowered her voice and spoke in an incredulous tone. Tai Budian snorted and then slowly reached her hand into her clothes. Then she took off a jade pendant from her neck. Wu Qianshan only felt a blur before her eyes and a faint halo flashed by. Then she rubbed her eyes in disbelief. Then she rubbed them again. "It's true." Wu Qianshan moaned and almost fainted. She swore that she really didn't blink just now. And Tai Budian was also really standing there without moving. However, after a flash of light, Tai Butian's entire appearance changed. She was originally a handsome young man full of heroic spirit. But after the flash she actually turned into she was still dressed as a man. But now Tai Butian's cheeks were rosy and her hair was like clouds, flowing down elegantly. Her chest was high and her waist was slender. She was obviously a peerless beauty. Wu Qianshan's eyes instantly widened. Tai Butian's eyes turned and she smiled lightly. "Did you see clearly?" Wu Qianshan nodded in a daze. Thinking about the feeling just now, she couldn't help but reminisce. Her fingers actually unconsciously twirled and 2 words suddenly came to her mind. So big. How could it be so big? Wu Qianshan lowered her head and looked at her chest. She compared with Tai Budian and Tai Budian. In terms of appearance they were about the same, but she was really big. "Come in." Tai Budian saw her twirling and couldn't help but blush. She pulled her hand and affectionately pulled her to sit down. This time of course Wu Qianshan's body. She opened fire by surprise. "You're a woman's husband? Yours by surprise? By TSS by TS by TSD? SSS. S's? S by T is she's, S's. T. Tai Shi-cheng, the Emperor of Iron Cloud, suddenly went crazy and massacred the entire palace. Even the Empress and the Princess were not spared. Wu Qianshan was also a very intelligent person. She finally understood what was going on. She couldn't help but sigh. Tai Budian saw her expression and knew that she had guessed something. Tai Butian's expression also became a little gloomy. She said in a low voice, "Back then my father only had a few daughters. He didn't have an emperor. I was the youngest. At that time my father seemed to have a premonition. He kept my birth a secret and told everyone that I was the emperor. There was another reason. When I was born my master was traveling in Iron Cloud. He was in the palace at that time. After seeing me, he felt that I had a good foundation and accepted me as his younger brother. Moreover, he gave me a jade token. That's the one." "I see." Wu Qianshan nodded in relief. Wu Qianshan was still puzzled. "But why did you?" She looked at Tai Budian from the corner of her eyes. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Tai Butian's face instantly turned red. Wu Qianshan recalled how she used to regard Tai Budian as a scourge. The more she thought about it, the more amused she felt. She chuckled. "You're really something. You actually had feelings for me since a long time ago." Tai Butian's face turned red. She said, "I was just testing you first. Hee hee." Wu Qianshan was overjoyed. She laughed so hard that her body shook. "You're actually an empress. You're really something." You want to be a pervert, but can you do it? Tai Budian finally couldn't take it anymore. She jumped up with a red face and grabbed Wu Qianshan's chest. Little hoof. If you continue to spout nonsense. As she said that, she actually gave Wu Qianshan a taste of her own medicine. She also mischievously rubbed and pinched her chest. Wu Qianshan felt weak all over. She hurriedly slapped her hand away and said, "You wanted my help just for this?" "Yes. But it's not just this. There's something else." Tai Budian stammered. "What is it?" Wu Qianshan smiled like a flower. "There's also something like." Tai Budian leaned close to Wu Qianshan's ear and said a few words. "Oh." Wu Qianshan exclaimed and jumped up. "You're pregnant? What this? Keep your voice down." Tai Budian reacted quickly. She covered Wu Qianshan's mouth. "My little grand. What are you shouting for?" Wu Qianshan looked at her in shock. After a long time she asked, "Whose?" Tai Buqian's face turned red. This matter was really a little difficult to talk about. "Who plucked you, the number one flower of Iron Cloud?" Wu Qianshan still felt that it was a little unbelievable. Tai Budian steeled her heart and said, "Who else? Isn't it your sweetheart?" "Jianghu?" Wu Qianshan was shocked. Her face turned pale and she stood up trembling all over. "Yes, but..." Tai Budian heaved a long sigh. He himself doesn't know. As she spoke, she told him everything that had happened that day. Since she had already said so much, it was impossible for her not to tell him everything. Wu Qianshan listened slowly. Her pale face slowly recovered. So it was like this. It was she who used her lifetime of cultivation and martial arts, as well as the most precious thing of a woman to save his life. "So I need your help." Tai Budian finally finished. She looked at Wu Qianshan somewhat anxiously. "I'm angry. I can't do anything about it. With such a thing happening you don't have to say any more." Wu Qianshan bit her red lips lightly. An intense struggle flashed across her heart. Finally, her eyes revealed a determined look. "I promise you." She couldn't be with him forever, but raising his child with her own hands was also a kind of consolation, right? Wu Qianshan turned her head and looked at Tai Budian. This outstanding beauty in front of her was really in the same boat as her. It was just that, in some areas she was more unfortunate than her. But in some areas she had something more than her. Wu Qianshan stared at Tai Buqian's belly. A wave of jealousy suddenly rose in her heart. His child. This was his child. Recalling how Tai Budian was very determined not to let her go that night, Wu Qianshan couldn't help but think. If the one who went wasn't Tai Budian but herself, then this child would. Thinking of this, Wu Qianshan's face heated up. She tried her best to stop herself from thinking about Tai Budian. "Thank you, Qianshan." Tai Buqian's eyes shone with gratitude. She said sincerely, "But I hope that you won't let him know about this." "I understand." Wu Qianshan bit her lips and promised solemnly. She really understood. Since he didn't have her in his heart and had another woman whom he loved deeply, and he didn't even know that she was a woman, what was the use of telling him? Make him suffer? Let him choose? Force him to take responsibility? What a joke. Both Tai Budian and Wu Qianshan were extremely proud women. Both of them would never use such methods. Since you don't know, then don't know. We won't make things difficult for you. Even if such methods could really force Chu Yang to submit, both of them wouldn't bother to use them. We don't want this kind of love that comes from charity and forced marriage. If we want it, then we will defeat the woman in his heart fair and square. Tai Budian sighed and said, "You have to consider this matter carefully. Although I want you to agree, I don't want you to force him. After all, you still have hope. You're not like me." Wu Qianshan shook her head painfully and said, "There's no need to consider. If he accepts, then he'll be pitying me. What use do I have for such pity? I'm already very satisfied with this ending." She looked blankly at the tea and said softly, "I know very well." Tai Budian sighed deeply. Then she picked up the jade pendant and wore it around her neck. A burst of dense light flickered. The peerless beauty suddenly turned into that valiant and exuberant emperor of a generation who looked down on the world. "Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble you a lot. Give birth to a son for me and lay the foundation of Iron Cloud." Tai Budian said softly. Wu Qianshan smiled and nodded. "Give birth to a son for me? This is really a replacement. Later, I'll immediately send someone to sect leader Wu of Beyond the Heavens sect to propose marriage. I'll take you as my empress." Tai Budian said lightly, "Beyond the Heavens sect will be a relative of the emperor. After Iron Cloud unifies the world, Beyond the Heavens sect will be the first protector sect. Chanshan, do you have anything to add? I don't want. Wu Chanshan thought for a while and said, just a little reward is enough. If the reward is too heavy, it will harm Beyond the Heavens sect. After all, a sect is not an imperial court. That's good. Tai Budian agreed. Also, I don't want to give up the position of Minister of Butian Pavilion. Wu Chanshan said softly, King of Hell Chu is me. This is also a secret. Hearing the words King of Hell Chu, Tai Budian was a little stunned. After a long time she nodded. Suddenly her eyes lit up and she said, Minister Chu, then, what do you think? On the surface you're my empress. But when you're Minister of Butian Pavilion, I'll be your woman and your wife. How about that? Wu Chanshan was stunned. From these words she suddenly felt Tai Butian Xian's unconditional love for Chu Yang. Even the title hidden in the deepest part of her heart was so important to this generation's empress? Wu Chanshan nodded silently. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. But tears of sadness came out of their smiles. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.